those beaches to attack German troops. It was the largest land and water invasion in history. Estimated 10,000 Allied troops were killed, wounded, or
tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 104202893 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la pantalla en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this moment, I will take roll call once again. Trustee Irvin,
Yes,
present. Trustee Maestas,
things are kind of going in and out.
Trustee Marks,
Present?
Trustee Mejia, Trustee Mejia is present via Teams. Trustee West,
Here.
Vice President Brown,
I'm here.
and President Lopez here. Well, welcome everyone to the Modesto City Schools 1477 regular board meeting of June 6, 2022. This meeting is now called to order. Will everyone please stand for a moment of silence? Thank you very much. This is the open session of the Board of Trustees. Open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district website, and the recordings will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Modesto City Schools board meetings have been adjusted to follow safety and health precautions until further notice. MCS has the opportunity for the public to provide comments. It is outlined on our agenda. The public has been given the opportunity to call and leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email, or appear in person before the board. Any public comments received via email or voicemail prior to the noon of the day of the board meeting will not be read out loud, but have been transcribed, and printed copies will be provided to each board member prior to the start of the board meeting and are available to the public. The voice and email public comments will be attached to future board meetings for approval. This practice will continue until further notice. For the members in the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. And in regards to public comments for those individuals that are here with us tonight, if you wish to address the board during the period for public comment, please fill out, on an item that's not on the agenda, please fill out the public presentation request card, such like this. You'll find those in the back. Once you fill it out, please hand them over to Ms. Antoinette in the back. And then if you need translation, please make sure that you state so on your card. And then if you wish to speak, please fill out those as those. We won't accept those after the public period begin. There's a maximum time for one speaker is 3 minutes for a total 30 minutes. And at this point, we will do our Superintendent Noguchi's welcome and announcements.
Good evening, everyone. Apologize for the technical issues, but I'm confident that we will get this shored up shortly. We have a new system that we've put into play. It's the first time we put in a new system in many, many years, so we're kind of having a little bit of growing pains, but I'm confident that it will be successful. I want to thank everyone for coming this evening, both virtually and in person. It's always great to see a number of folks out in the audience, especially as we look to re-recognizing individuals. As we gear down for this year and really look towards the summer, I do want to take a moment to thank the executive cabinet, those that have been around here this year. You know, without them, we wouldn't have successful board meetings. But successful board meetings don't just happen by accident. It really is design, and that design takes a lot of time, energy, and talent. So I do want to thank the executive team, not only for their talents, but their professionalism and their unwavering support of my leadership, which ultimately translates to the board as well. So thank you for that. Tonight, I'm very happy to welcome and congratulate some new members to our management team. Actually, I don't believe that they're new. They're all just moving around in different areas, and I'd like to recognize them in their different leadership roles. So when your name is called, will you please stand to be recognized? And then collectively at the end, we'll give you a huge round of applause. You know, I've always said that central to a successful district is leadership. I coined that as leadership matters, and leadership absolutely matters. And the individuals that I'm going to showcase tonight, all of them are strong leaders in our district, and I want to thank them for their service in their current roles and as they transition to their new roles next year. First off, we have Ernesto Calderon, formerly Administrator of Special Projects for Induction. He now will be moving to a Senior Director position in CIPD, otherwise known as Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Learning. We are lucky to have him, especially with his expertise in early literacy, which I know is a focus of the board. Additionally, we have Amanda Moore, who is formerly or currently the principal of Enox High School. We welcome her to the role of school leadership, a senior director of school leadership. She is going to bring a great insight into what's worked and what hasn't worked relative to principal coaching and the support for principals. So we welcome her to her role, her new role. Next, Francisco Guerrero, currently principal of Marshall Elementary. He's been there for 7 years. He's going to be moving over to the principalship at Mark Twain Junior High. I'm very excited for this particular movement. Francisco was a student at Mark Twain. He was a teacher at Mark Twain. He has students at Mark Twain that he has supported since they were in kindergarten. So I am going to expect and really welcome all the magic that he's going to bring that school this next year. Next, we have Jorge Estrada, formerly a VP at Shackelford, who has been under the strong direction of one of our best principals, and that is Sue McCann. He is going to be moving over to the position that Francisco Guerrero is moving out of, and he will be the interim principal at Marshall Elementary School. And then lastly, Monica Lombardo, principal of Mark Twain, will be using her expertise in early literacy and early childhood development as she moves to the principal of Beard Elementary. So as I said, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and let's take a moment and give them all a big round of applause. Lastly, I'm just incredibly proud of the leadership and the leadership development that we've been able to forge over the last 4 years, and certainly before I was in this seat. I am confident that the focus on leadership and the focus on student outcomes as we move into next year will support us as we move towards our destination district status, which is what we were working for. So with that, thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to President Lopez.
Thank you very much, and this leads us to our board member reports. Is there any of the board members wishing to make a report this evening? I have Dr. West.
Thank you. It seems like it's been more than 2 or 3 weeks since our last meeting, but oh, how many events we've had since then. We had graduations. I attended 2 graduations, both on the field of Johansen High School. Tuesday night was La Loma graduation, and I've never been so hot standing outside. Thursday's graduation at Johansen for Johansen High School was cold and windy, and I think it rained a little bit. So 2 very different feelings, but celebrations. Those graduations are some of my favorite times of the whole year. We had a ribbon cutting for the new cafeteria at Wilson, and I was super excited to see that. That cafeteria is state of the art. I don't know if public's allowed to see those, but that cafeteria is amazing. I wish I had something like that when I was a student. And then we did the groundbreaking on Fremont Elementary Campus, and we were able to see what's coming there. Great things are coming to the Fremont campus as well. And I just have to say, I miss our students tonight. I miss our student pledgers. I miss our student representative. School districts without students are sort of useless, so I can't wait to get those kids back, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice President Brown?
Yes, the graduations were wonderful. I was able to attend the graduation for Bayer High School and also for Enox High School, and it was extremely rewarding this time to be able to look each student in the eye and see their face and catch their attention enough to make sure that each one of them gave me a smile back. And that was extremely rewarding. The way things happened this time, we were able to shake their hands and hand them a diploma, but we didn't have to set them up for a picture with us. The picture happened away from us, and it really allowed us to have that one-on-one connection with each student as they graduated, and that was really, really rewarding. The ribbon cutting was amazing, and I was in mourning as I missed the Fremont groundbreaking. I've been able to attend every ribbon cutting and groundbreaking that's happened in the last 3 years, and this one caught me overbooked, and I felt terrible that I wasn't able to be there. I take ownership of each one of those events because I am so excited to see the progress that we're making at every one of our campuses with all of the improvements that the public has allowed us with our bond measures. It's been phenomenal, and we love to see the progress. Cannot wait for the August tour that we get to take of the district and see all the things that have happened this summer and what our kids are coming back to. We've been able to do absolute miracles at our campuses, and as you just kind of gauge the progress, you'll join with me in celebrating all the wonderful things that are happening and the improvements that we're able to make. I was able to make it to the Budget Advisory Committee meeting. I think that happened since our last board meeting. And I believe we had a construction committee meeting, and it's exciting to see all of the projects that are happening this summer, and can't wait to celebrate all of those as they're completed. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Marks?
Yes, it's been a fast couple of weeks. This is the first time in 25 years that I wasn't able to attend graduation. I became ill that week and could not attend, and I was so bummed. It's like the highlight of the year is to hand out the diplomas. So I'd signed up for 3 schools, and I was so disappointed. But I know you all did a great job filling in and helping out at the schools for that. I did attend, though, the CSBA Delegate Assembly and up in Sacramento, and we had a new director for our region named Paul Wallace, and you may have heard of him. He's from Patterson High School. He's going to be our new regional director for CSBA. And I attended as the past president of CSBA, and so I'm a delegate as long as I'm a school board member. So it's an awesome responsibility that we got to vote on some different items up there. And we're pushing for AB 2933 on transportation. So we have transportation for all our students, and that's by O'Donnell from San Diego. He put that forward, and that's the one transportation bill we all could support. And then we got great news. Of course, we'll hear more about it tonight about the budget. And so we had lots of great information on that. And I also attended the Budget Advisory Committee, and John Gray came down from Sacramento, and he presented to us along with Michelle Price and Tim Zerley on our budget and where we're headed with the Budget Committee. I really appreciate this Budget Committee. We didn't used to have one, in this format where we have the union's representation on it, along with our staff and board members. And it's just a great way for us to have that dialogue and be able to talk about what's important to all of us and move forward with the budget. Of course, this year has been a great year for our budget with what's happening with the state. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that I attended the Tuolumne Night of Talent. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but it was at the State Theater, and it was so fabulous. Trustee Urban and I both were able to attend, and wow, those students did such a fantastic job with their instruments. They sang, they did some readings. We had them all the way from kindergarten through 7th grade perform that night, and it was just an awesome experience. So anytime you get a chance to go to one of those, I hope you can attend, and it's just really a blessing to see the talent that our students have and our staff. We had some great staff members sing too, so the teacher, Ron Boren, he usually does a lot with the school there and has been for many years. So that was awesome. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Trustee Mejia?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I have a little time hearing the board, but I'm happy that you can hear me. I just wanted my report will be very briefly. I was super excited. I was with Dr. Noguchi at Mark Twain graduation, and then I was also at the Modesto High graduation, so I was very excited. And I shared my the how our district has so many languages represented, and at the graduation, students spoke in like I think 8 or 9 different languages, if I can remember. It was a beautiful thing to see. So I was pretty impressed with the diversity in our inclusion in our graduation. So that's it. My report is very brief today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mejia. Trustee Urban?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing as well. So, in my report, I went to the, like others, went to the Fremont groundbreaking ceremony to, or actually groundbreaking ribbon cutting, the new graduation for the new nutrition services facility is outstanding. I mean, it's a huge benefit to our students, our teachers, our staff, administrators on that campus and the community. That is definitely going to set the bar high there in the community for the meals being the hundreds of meals being delivered, and also for multi-purpose to be able to do, those things in theater arts and, after school programs using the multi-purpose room that, literally almost double and a half in size. So that was great to see that. I'm getting Fremont and Wilson mixed up. So they both was at Wilson. That was the nutrition services there. Also, I got a chance to go to the Elliott graduation, the Davis graduation, and the Roosevelt graduation, and also attended and was the MC at the NAACP Black graduation ceremony that they had as well. And so got to see our students. Some of our students I saw multiple times because they not only attended the NAACP at graduation, but they were also graduates at Roosevelt, Davis, and Elliott as well. So it was a good season. The staff did an excellent job in coordinating these graduations. I know, they've done it year after year, but they've got it down to a science. So I was really appreciative and really thankful for the staff and the way they carried out the graduations efficiently, safely, and on time. So that's my report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Irvin. My report is very brief as well. I had the awesome pleasure of being out at the Modesto High graduation, Downey graduation, and Hanshaw graduation. Time and time again, I'm excited, and I see a bright future for not only for our school district and our community, but for our overall community. So it was a delight. And last year we were having some of these, but some folks were still not in the bleachers or in the seats. But this year, I think we saw a little bit more of what we're accustomed to, and the students were, I think, was super excited even to see us. I think usually they're like, okay, my diploma and move on. But this time they really wanted to take the picture with us. So I saw a lot of excitement, and so it was amazing. So I appreciate the support that everyone does throughout 12 years of academic schooling to make this happen. So thank you. And with that, we'll be moving on to A7, which is our recognitions. I know that it was mentioned that our students aren't in the room today, but we still want to recognize great individuals in our district. In this case, really, those individuals that come in on a day-to-day basis to a new reality each day. So for that, I'll send it over to Sarah Gill.
I'm going to start, and then I'll pass it on to Ms. Gill. Mike Henderson, Associate Superintendent and Human Resources, and just had some remarks. Good evening, Board President Lopez and trustees, Dr. Noguchi and Cabinet. Because of the orientation of the podium for what we're about to do and recognizing individuals, I'll deliver the remarks from here so my back's not to you. It's my sincere honor to have the opportunity tonight to recognize our certificated and classified substitute employees this evening. When we speak of the district's workforce, we often refer to our probationary and permanent certificated, classified, and management employees. Our workforce is the foundation for all that we do in the district and serves as the hinge upon which our success pivots. But there's a more quiet part of our workforce that performs an extremely valuable service for the district. They are our substitute employees. Under normal circumstances, before the pandemic, we leaned on our substitute employees to fill the void during employee absences. They step up, often on short notice, and at different work locations each day, as you mentioned, to serve the needs of our classrooms, our school sites, and district departments, and ultimately to support our students. They provide continuity in instruction and maintain the academic program. They allow release time for our staff to participate in professional development. They provide critical custodial and clerical support and establish relationships in very short time to support the academic progress of the students in our classroom. Now, if we add to this the pandemic and its impacts over the past 2 years or 2 or more years, I think it's fair to say that we would have had an incredibly difficult time keeping our schools open if not for our dedicated substitute employees. They supported MCS at the onset when this pandemic spread through the community, when so much about it was unknown and gripped the community with fear. And their service kept us afloat during COVID spikes at the beginning of the year and with the Omicron surge this past winter. Our classified and certificated substitutes are our heroes in our book, and we are greatly indebted to them. Again, it's an honor to recognize our substitute employees for their dedication and service to Modesto City Schools. I'd like to give them all, and you can give yourselves a round of applause, please. This is not all of them. We have over 450 certificated substitutes and several hundred classified substitutes, but who we've invited are the top performing substitutes in our district. And I recognized a few faces. There's one in particular who kept me in line in high school as a student. I had one class I clowned around in, and when that teacher disappeared and Mr. Davila showed up, he got me on the straight and narrow really quick. And in fact, when I saw him walk in, I straightened up more in my chair. So I'm really glad to see him here. There are also folks who are retirees from our school district or from the profession. And to be a retiree, having served, your career, and to be here tonight means you've retired and you're among our top performing subs still in retirement. And we are tremendously grateful. I'd be remiss if I did not take a moment to recognize the efforts of Sarah Gill and Michelle Gutierrez, Senior Directors in Human Resources, and HR staff member Annabelle Garcia, for their daily triage of working with our substitutes to ensure that our coverage needs are met. Ms. Gill, who has primary responsibility for a substitute assignment, has been relentless in continuing to recruit and add to our substitute pools, providing training opportunities to support their success in their assignments, and collaborating with other district divisions, as has Ms. Gutierrez, to meet our site and department needs. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Gill for individual recognitions. Yes, again.
Well, good evening. Each substitute recognized this evening will receive a certificate, a Starbucks gift card, who doesn't love Starbucks, and a delicious cookie. And these are just small tokens of our thanks and appreciation for the large impact you guys have all made this school year and previous school years. When I call your name, please proceed to the front to be presented your certificate from Mr. Henderson and Dr. Noguchi and the rest of the board here this evening. Then on your way, as you exit, Ms. Gutierrez will hand you your other items. And we'd like to do 2 group photos, a classified group photo outside, as well as a certificated group photo. So classified staff will be up first when I call your name. And then if you can just head out to the right outside the door, Annabelle Garcia will be there, and she'll get a group photo after we finish with classified and then after we finish with certificated. And then when we're all done, family and friends that came to see your loved ones be recognized, I'll dismiss you at the end so you'll know, and then you will be free to exit as well. All right, without further ado, let's go with our classified recognition. First up is Aaron Austin. Not to only reward Aaron with applause, but if we can hold the applause to the end, we'll quickly go through and we'll give him a big round of applause at the very end. Luis Brambilla. Allison Burkett. Irma Canales. Oh, there she is. Susie Gutierrez. Rowan Hickson. Yolanda Iniguez. Carol Ann Jorgensen. Dolores Lazada. Kelly May. I would also like to note that some of our subs have now since been hired into permanent positions with us. One is Alicio Mendoza, one of our new computer techs. Loretta Minshew. Brian Pena, also a new computer tech. Hernan Reyes. Monica Romero. Rita Swanson. Van Tran. Marisa Velasquez, who is now a new health clerk at Modesto High School. Luz Yoshino. Let's give our classified substitutes a round of applause. Now to recognize our certificated staff. Ava Alanis. Thank you. Yeah. Sherry Avey. Deshaun Benton. Virginia Berry. Cam Davila. Stand up straight, Mr. Henderson. Twyla Engel. Cindy Ferris. Esmeralda Guzman Castaneda. Matthew Linker. Tamaria Mercer. James Montesano. Lisa Silvera. Pamela Snyder. Joan Taylor. Jeffrey Tudoro. Anne Vu. And last but not least, Miss Gladys Williams. Yes, let's give all of our substitutes a big round of applause. Family and friends, if you would like to join them, this would be a time to exit if you'd like to leave for this evening. And thank you very much for your time and for coming.
Thank you, everyone, for waiting. This will move on to A8, approval of the consent agenda. Are there any comments regarding consent agenda items from our public? Seeing none, are there any comments from our board? Yes.
I need to be recused from C4. My husband works for one of the companies, so when we get to C4, I'll need to be recused.
Okay, why don't we vote on that first? Yeah. Okay, we're gonna ask Trustee West to step out for a second. Do I hear a motion to approve C4?
I motion.
Motion by trustee Mejia, seconded by Vice President Brown. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And now, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding C4?
A motion to approve consent agenda excluding C4.
Motion by trustee Mejia, seconded by
I'll second it.
trustee West. All those, sorry.
Marks, that's okay.
Trustee Marks.
No worries.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. And this takes us to A9, approval of order of discussion action items. Do I hear a motion to approve the order of the discussion items for tonight? Moved by trustee Marks, seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we have the approval of our order of discussion. And then this takes us to the period for public comment. Thank you for everyone for attending, and I have a total of 8 cards for tonight. When I call your name, please come up. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and our first speaker is Lisa. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Lisa, and I've had some issues with my son who attended La Loma. Some huge safety issues had happened. He threatened to bring a gun on campus and shoot people. The school did not report it to anyone other than myself. They did not call law enforcement. They did not contact child and welfare and attendance or whatever in a timely manner. It went on for 7 months before this issue was even notated in his file. My son is high-functioning autistic. He's bipolar, ADHD, among other things. And at this point in time, I'm trying to get him residential treatment. He has done various behaviors inside the home and outside where he has taken weapons after other kids and has seriously injured other kids. And I feel that this gun threat at school is not being taken seriously, that he would hurt somebody, as well as others in the community. And he needs residential treatment, and the only way to get that for my son is through the IEP process. I have already gone to Benchmark Residential Treatment Facility, where the entire treatment team has approved him based on their whole team of psychiatrists, nurses, social workers, things of that have reviewed his entire file. He has met criteria. The only thing lacking for him to have that bed officially is for it to be put in his IEP. I am literally begging you to help keep the school safe, help keep our community safe, and help my son get well. It's what he needs. I am telling you, I'm a psychiatric nurse. This isn't something to play around with. I've done residential care. He's a ticking time bomb. Nobody wants the liability of if he does something. When you guys have the knowledge of how many times he's hurt somebody, letters from his private psychologist and psychiatrist telling you he needs residential now, nothing else will be okay. I need this issue addressed immediately and get the care my son needs and keep our schools safe, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rebecca Balbuena.
Good evening, Governing Board, Superintendent, members of the Cabinet. My name is Rebecca Balbuena, parent of 4 stakeholders of Modesto City Schools, representing the English learners, parent advocate, community activist under the umbrella of We Are La Raza, speaking under my daughter's constitutional rights, safe, secure, and peaceful. To once again be here on record, not only is my daughter an English learner student, but she's an IEP student. The MCS has failed once again for her to take full advantage of her resource under the LCAP. Since of January, I have had to pull her out 2 times for short-term independent study due to her safety in campus. And after exhausting various calls, emails to administration, in-person meetings, IEP meetings, to come up with a safe plan for her, as of today, I still have not heard from them. I want to thank Mr. Mark Herbst for taking his time to sit down with me and my daughter today, after Mr. Sanchez has failed to do so. He hasn't returned any calls or any emails. As I'm sitting in Mr. Herb's office, I see a frame with some quotes, vision and mission. Every student will have access to support services and enrichments to give them the knowledge upon graduation. The mission is to support the students and parents to provide resources, interventions, and to address the needs of each student. But where's my daughter and how is she any different from the rest? I just want my daughter to walk to school with no fear of student and administration retaliating against her every time she voices out. She should be focusing on her education and what a normal teen should be focusing on right now. I would also like to say something about the nutrition and how lucky all of you guys are that you guys are not getting to eat the school lunches and how all that money has been thrown away in the garbage. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Debbie Martinez. Good evening.
Good evening, President Adolfo Lopez, members of the cabinet, and Dr. Noguchi, good evening. Since I've talked to you and Mark, I have taken different approaches. I'm now bringing parents to the district to view their comments and concerns so that you can see what I see out there. We have just completed 1 year. I remember coming here on August and I was tyrant, I was screaming, but I'm gonna tone it down because why? It was said by you, Mr. Brown, we get nowhere when we yell. It was voiced to me out in the community. So I'm not gonna yell, but there's still the grand jury, there's still federal courts, there's still constitutional rights, there's still lack of service, there's still quality of service that is not being implemented. And Ms. Marks, you've been here forever. You've been here, Mr. Brown, forever. And I have yet seen any of you guys, we the people, to speak for us. I'm here, I'm the bearer of bad news. I have educators here in your community, in your district that are now calling me for help. I just talked to Tim right now. I have an educator who's very concerned about the time scheduling. I have parents that can't voice, but yet on your agenda, it talks about approval of special ed financing when we're over here, the community, saying misuse of public funds. We have a parent who's crying, saying, my daughter's not safe, and we have another parent saying, hold on, I'm trying to keep our schools safe, but yet it's all going on deaf ears. Who is paying attention to any of our voices? We, the people, we're in election years. We are in election, and it's sad to say that Modesto City Schools in the 23 districts that I'm in is still not in compliance when we reach out. We're not. Adolfo, how many times have I reached to you? We have children that are going to juvenile hall unjustifiably on your watch. What are we going to do here? You don't want me to yell. You don't want me to cry violations. You don't even want me to say that I currently have you guys in federal courts. So who's going to help me close the gaps? Which one of you? We the people. We the people. I need a voice now since you guys don't want me to yell. I won't yell, but guys, we got government watching. We got attorneys watching. We have federal and state watching. And yet you guys still sit here and do what when they come to your podium? We have a student that is threatening, and we have students that are violating and victimizing our children. There's a problem, and we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jolene Daly.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jolene Daly. I'm a concerned citizen, a business owner, and actually a mental health provider here in Modesto. I'm also running for state office. And during my campaign, I was notified by a parent that Modesto City Schools it has a student that is at risk to harm others. The parent of the child has reached out, and it appears that we as the community are waiting for the worst-case scenario to happen before we step up for prevention. Every study on violence states that we need to intervene and intervene early. The mother has requested that, although it is my understanding that due to lack of proper documentation, the Modesto City Schools is not prepared to take the appropriate steps to help this child and keep our community safe. In fact, Adam Langford, an expert on mass shootings, states risk factors are mental health at 62% of the mass shootings. And she's already stated that there is mental health involved here. In addition, he states that the schools are the first places to find and catch these situations before anything violent happens. The first red flag is the threat. It's already happened. Are we waiting for the final red flag for a gun to come to campus? Here we are, concerned citizens talking to the board to intervene before this child does something that cannot be undone, resulting in the loss of lives of our community and also a criminal history for this child that doesn't deserve it. We can intervene. We can make a difference. Neither the community nor the child deserves to go through and have a gamble. Do we want to gamble with that 62%? I don't think so. An appropriate placement has been found for this child. We urge you to follow through with this placement without continued hesitation or statements regarding the least restrictive learning environment. The parent understands that the best option is least restrictive. However, at this point with the threat, we can't go there. We cannot wait for something violent to happen. Now, as a community, we know that Modesto City Schools is aware of this situation, and at this point, it is now your responsibility to intervene. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Diana Middleton is our next speaker.
Good evening and thank you. There's a lot of passion. I have to follow that. I am here based on the proposed bell schedules for the high schools. And I know there's some compliance issues, and I understand that we have to start 30 minutes later, and that pushes the whole schedule back. I get that. My concern is the additional hour that has been added, because apparently we are out of compliance with the number of minutes. And this district has chosen to simply add an extra hour by making each period longer. And what I am asking is if we can think a little bit more creatively and think about thinking about the students who take a zero period. My student has taken a zero period this year and played 3 sports. He's at school at 7 a.m. and home at 5:30. I don't know why I'm getting upset. I'm sorry. I think the stories upset me. Anyway, he's home at 5 o'clock after sports. Now he's going to have to take a zero period, because zero periods are important for those kids trying to get all their requirements to go to a UC and to take those electives that will differentiate themselves. We have amazing pathways in this district. Computer science pathways, robotics, leadership opportunities. They can't take them if they need to take a foreign language to be able to go to a great college or aspire to go to the best college they can. Zero periods are very important. Now, with the proposed bell schedule, they're going to be at school at 7:30 for the zero period and not out until 3:30. Then they have to play sports, and I'm anticipating picking my son up at like 6 or 6:30 at night, because if you just do the math and add it all up, and that's not okay for these 15-year-olds. So instead of just complaining, I have an idea. I'm not the smartest person in the room. This is just one idea. Please consider my option as well as other options. We have an existing schedule that we use this school year. Why not take the 8th period and make it mandatory? That way, these kids get an extra class period. not just an extra class period, an extra subject. They can take another elective in the regular day, which then decreases the necessity to take a zero period. They can start school at 8:30 and then get out at 3:30, but instead of taking only 6 classes, I get it's confusing with lunch, but anyways, so you take an 8th period class. That way they can take those electives. If they fail a class, they can make up their units. They can take programs like, AVID and robotics and leadership and clubs and the things that matter. These kids are working so hard to take a rigorous schedule.
If you want to go ahead and finish your last sentence.
Okay, to take a rigorous schedule as well as extracurriculars to differentiate themselves. The zero period becomes very important, but with the longer day, it's a burden. So please consider adding an additional subject to the regular school day instead of just making existing subjects longer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Melissa Monday.
Good evening. I feel like I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record, Diana. So I am also here to speak about the extended day. I have a son. He goes to Bayer High School for the robotics program. They just went to Houston, and it was incredible. And as we tried in 8th grade to plan out his 4 years, he also plays baseball and water polo. It's very, very, very difficult because robotics is not considered an academic course in the UC system. You go through the A to G, and it's a G, it's an elective. But in order for him to go into a robotics engineering program for college, what does he need to do? He needs to take robotics. He needs to be able to differentiate himself. And there are so many students in Modesto City Schools, computer science, the IB program, pathways at Grigori, child development program at Johansson, all of these different things that are important, classes that are hugely important for them to take. And then based on the phone dialer that we got today, there's a proposal for the 7th period to become a sports PE period. Well, now anybody who wants to be an athlete in high school and wants to aspire to go to a rigorous college, are they going to have to take 7th period PE for their entire high school years in order to play sports? There are a lot of schools where zero periods are not academic classes. He cannot take robotics at zero period. He cannot take a foreign language for zero period. So now instead of 6 periods that we can squeeze all of this into, now we're down to 5. And it literally does not pencil. I challenge you to pencil it out. So I would encourage you to keep the 50-minute class schedule for the traditional schedules, reduce the passing period by 1 minute to 5 minutes, and have an 8-period school day, with that 8th period being optional for PE for those who are student athletes, or an extra elective for those who are not student athletes. This puts their start time at 8:30 and their end time at 3:30, keeps lunch the same, and it allows those students who are aspiring to do more to have the chance to do it. We don't want to handcuff our students. We want to give them every opportunity. And I know that that's why all of you are here, is to provide our students the best opportunities. But the best is rarely the easiest path forward. So let's dig into the hard path and let's see what the best we can come up with for our kids is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Michelle Tomlinson. Good evening.
I'm really sad tonight, let me tell you. I'm really disappointed in the system, in the processes and responses of the way Modesto City Schools have handled IEP process. There are a lot of issues there are a lot of parents who will not come and speak about those issues because they don't understand. They don't understand the language you speak. They don't understand the process of it. They don't understand each option that they're given. They walk away intimidated by you. They walk away agreeing because they think that's what they have to do. And they walk away agreeing also because, well, they're forced into trusting you almost. This is how true parents, this is how the families feel. And what I'm asking of you tonight is don't be bullies. When you're speaking with parents, when you're sitting in an IEP meeting, for example, just recently, I had a whole IEP team attack an outside psychiatrist over the phone when they were getting medical records for a student who threatened to bring a gun to school. You would think that a psychiatrist and a psychologist outside that's working with the family would be sufficient to get a child what a child needs in these IEP processes, rather than have a team of 10, 12 people badgering the outside doctors. Those are my thoughts on that. I think it's kind of ridiculous, and I think it's really ridiculous that these parents leave feeling like they haven't accomplished anything. They're working with you, the school, because the school says, let us help you. Let's set some goals and let us help you. Well, somewhere through that process, that gets lost because I have talked to many parents who this process have failed. They're afraid to speak up because they get intimidated. Don't intimidate us. Don't be bullies. Talk to us. Let us be heard, because we're not going to sit back anymore and be afraid to talk to the schools and sit back and wonder, did the school board hear us? Are they going to make any changes for us? Because from what I can tell up until now, parents' voices were not heard. No changes made. So when are you guys going to actually stand up for what you wanted when you got these positions, was to make that change for children? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker for tonight, Becky Telefor. Okay, thank you. So again, even though we cannot engage in discussion or take any formal actions on any items that aren't on the agenda, I appreciate your guys' willingness to follow our protocols in addressing the board and taking your time to share with us your thoughts and opinions about our school district. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And we will be moving on to B1, California School Employee Association report. Is the president for CSEA or the vice president present? Nope. Seeing none, I'll be moving on to B2, which is a review of draft resolution calling for the bond measure election, high school ballot label, full ballot text, and bond project list. Mr. Zerly.
Thank you. Good evening, President Lopez, trustees. Clearly, and for good reason, we've been spending some time lately celebrating both the start and completion of elementary school projects made possible by the 2018 Measures D and E. So I'm pleased to make this presentation tonight for our high schools. And tonight we have members from our very skilled bond team here that will answer any questions from the board. We have Kathy Domenico, our financial advisor with Capital Public Finance Group, Robin Garrity, our bond consultant with TBWB Strategies, Sean Mick, our bond counsel with Dennis Walliver and Kelly. Tonight, we will review with the board the need for a high school bond measure, and we'll review proposed bond language for a resolution calling for the election, 75-word ballot statement, full ballot text, bond project list, next steps, and then questions. Why are we considering this now for the high schools? Well, it's been over 20 years, 2001 to be exact, since our community passed a high school bond measure. Measures D&E success has shown that the district is a good steward of the community dollars that are provided to us. And our initial survey results indicate community voter support for a successful bond measure with an effective and positive bond campaign prior to the election. Modesto City Schools is actually two separate districts, as many of us know, serving TK through 12th grade students. Modesto City Elementary School sites, there are 26 schools. Modesto City High Schools, there are 8 school sites. In 2018, Measures D and E only covers our TK8 schools. We cannot use any of the funds for our 9-12 high schools for Measures D and E. In 2017, when we were considering a bond measure, the consulting team recommended focusing on elementary needs first, then a high school bond later. We have a long history of providing high-quality education across the 8 schools, serving more than 15,000 students in 9th through 12th grade. Our high schools currently exist in facilities ranging in age from 12 to 100 years. This one's a little confusing to some people because we just celebrated our 150th anniversary. The key point here is existing facilities. Modesto High School moved to its current site in 1918, but none of the facilities remain today. In 1947, the new administration building at Modesto High School was built, and then classroom buildings followed after that. So Modesto High School is the home to our oldest building in the Modesto High School district, and that is what is currently being used as the administration building today. And to continue and maintain our high-quality education for our 9th through 12th grade students, updates are needed even for our newest schools, Enoch's High School and Gregory High School. In 2015, the district completed a facility needs assessment, better known as FNA. The facility needs assessment evaluated the condition of existing facilities. $380 million at that time was assigned to the needs for our existing facilities. I just want to point out, and that was in 2014 dollars. We all know construction costs have escalated since then, but that helped us identify the need for our existing high school facilities. An additional $105 million was identified for additional capital needs at each site. These would be beyond the improvements identified in the FNA. These would be for new buildings, not something repairing or modernizing an existing facility. Types of needs identified in the FNA in 2014, you can see here that they're various, and these are all things that are important today, and we'll talk about in a minute as far as high priorities for an upcoming bond measure. And then these are type of additional capital needs identified. And so these are items that would be additions to our school sites, our high school sites, outside of the existing facilities. So similar to the priorities established in 2018 for Measures D and E, we've identified high priority facility improvement projects identified for a bond measure. And you can see those underlined here: outdated and damaged facilities, classroom technology and career technical improvements, improved accessibility, health and safety improvements, physical education, and athletic facilities. And there's some words below that would describe possible uses for each one of those categories. As you recall, on October 4th in a board workshop, we let you spend your dollars, just like we did in the elementary campaign 4 years ago, to determine what's the board priorities. And so you can see the board priorities are the left, based on those same 5 high priority improvement areas. This is how the board, when we tallied up the dollars spent, this is how the board priorities were spent. We also followed that up on November 3rd with Lori Euland, who guides our high school, or actually 7th through 12th grade, Student Advisory Council. So we did the exact same spending activity with our Student Advisory Council, the student leaders, and you can see how their priorities came out. The first two were exactly the same as the board priorities. The third priority for students was improved accessibility, followed by outdated and damaged facilities, and then health and safety improvements. So this is just to show you comparison between the way the board spent their facility dollars versus the way our students did that as well. So what would the bond structure look like? Well, we're considering $198 million of bonds for high priority projects. Project priority would be determined with board input as to, similar to what we did with Measures D&E for elementary school sites. We had 26 school sites under those measures, but the board identified with staff input 8 priority school sites to receive the majority of bond measures D&E. Bond dollars will not be spread equally for a high school bond program due to various ages and conditions. I mean, it's very clear that Gregory High School does not have the same level of need as Modesto High School or Downey High School or some of our older facilities. However, just like our elementary bond measure, all of our high schools will receive improvements if we have and when we have a successful bond measure. Having a bond measure will allow us to leverage state funding for modernization eligible projects. What does this mean? That means the district will have our match in local bond funds for the district that will allow us to access money from a potential 2022 state bond measure. What that really means is it allows our dollars to go farther because we're now eligible to receive and will receive state bond money to put with our locally generated bond program. This question comes up a lot because, I mean, clearly we have a strained economic environment on our community, on our voters today. We all know that when we go to the gas station or we go to the grocery store or we go really anywhere. And so how much would this measure cost? We would be planning a Proposition 39 measure on the ballot. This type of measure requires 55% voter approval, and the cost to our homeowners would be an estimated $29 per 100,000 in assessed value per year. And then you can see just some generic numbers here, what that would look like for a $300,000 assessed value home, $87 a year. If you broke that down into a monthly, that would be $7.25 a month. $400,000 would be $116 a year, and a $500,000 assessed home would be $145 a year per year for this bond program. Assessed value is based on the purchase price of the home, not the current market value. So if a home was bought 10, 15, 20 years ago, that price, that assessed value is much lower than what the current market value is today if that homeowner decided to sell his or her property. If successful, our homeowners would not see an increase to their property tax bills until the 23-24 tax year. So this would not be an immediate increase. If passed in November, we would not have our first sale bond issuance until the spring of 23 in preparation for that summer. So the homeowners would not see that increase until the 23-24 year. It would not be immediate upon passage in November. Now I'd like to invite our bond counsel, Sean Mick, to the podium. Sean will review the bond documents, the legal documents that you have in your agenda.
Good evening, Board President Lopez, members of the board.
So I'm going to ask that you speak real closely to the mic because the two folks that are on virtual are having a hard time hearing. So they are hearing better if you get closer to the mic. And I see that you're really tall, so that might be a problem. But
Is this better?
That's better. And so yeah, that's good.
Good evening, Board President Lopez, members of the board, Dr. Noguchi. Thank you for having me here today. Wanted to give you a high-level review, and I promise I won't go page by page through this resolution. I'm sure you've seen many of them in your time. But because some of the members here are new and haven't been here since 2018 when the original elementary measures were brought forward, we thought it would be a good idea to walk through at a high level what the resolution is and what it does for you. Essentially, this is the legal mechanism to get the election in front of the voters and instruct the county registrar to do what it needs to do to consolidate with the other election matters coming before it in November. So you'll see the first few pages of the resolution have recitals. They are the background facts, as Tim has gone through already. They also have the Prop 39 legalities and requirements. And as Tim has mentioned, some of those accountability measures include Citizens Oversight Committee, which would be required just like measures D and E to provide oversight of the expenditures, and also annual independent performance audits and financial audits to be conducted and brought to the CBOC or Oversight Committee. Most importantly for tonight's discussion are the exhibits that are attached to the resolution. There are 3 exhibits. The first one is the 75-word statement, and most voters might only see this 75-word statement and may not read the full ballot text. So in these 75 words, we have to convey what it is that the district is attempting to achieve here, but also be mindful of all the legal requirements. So apologies for the strained language. You'll read through it and think, what is this saying to me? There are certain requirements of law that are included here, including the estimate of costs that Tim has mentioned. But we're also trying to convey what exactly it is that we're asking the electorate to vote yes on. Exhibit B is the full ballot text, and that is going to be printed in the voter guide. That contains not only the recitals in the front part of the resolution as to the background facts, but also the needs of the district. So that's in part 1, the key findings. Secondly, we have as a high-level summary of the accountability measures. So that's the evaluation of needs that this board has gone through in deciding whether or not to bring forward the measure. Also, again, the Citizens Oversight Committee and those requirements and the audits. Most importantly, though, Section 3 is the bond project list. This is required to be printed in the full ballot text, and this gives the voters an overview, or actually a list of everything that the district intends to spend the bond dollars on. So if it's not on this list, those bond dollars cannot be spent on those projects. So it's important to focus on the bond project list to make sure it is a complete recitation of the capital improvements that the district wants. Lastly, Exhibit C is a tax rate statement that's required to be also put into the ballot materials. It's signed by the superintendent, and it gives the voters an estimate of the cost of the bonds over the lifetime. That, in a nutshell, is the resolution. We're bringing it here for a first read tonight so that you'll be familiar with the contents of it and that you can reflect on it. And then it'll be brought back on the 20th. Is that right, Tim? The 20th? Yes. For consideration by this board.
So President Lopez, can we just take a 5-minute break? Because the 2 that are listening in are not hearing anything. So let's have them reconnect and then we'll come back.
Sounds good. We'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back around 7:21. Thanks.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I don't want just YouTube, I want Teams. Okay. Yeah, no, it's fine. Test. How does that sound? Test. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Oh. Test, 1, 2, 3, test, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Test, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes, we can. Okay. Everyone, welcome back. We were on next steps.
All right, we'll use this one. So next steps would be the next board meeting, June 20th. That would be our deadline in order for the board to pass a resolution and as to transmit it to Stanislaus County to get it on the ballot measure for November. June 20th, you would see again the documents authorizing the resolution, authorizing the bond issuance, and also the legal documents that Sean just reviewed with you that are on tonight's agenda. After that, if the board decides to move forward, we would form another bond campaign committee. And again, the success of Measures D and E has allowed the district to have many more partners than during the 2018 elementary bond campaign. I would expect, based on our initial outreach, we've probably have tripled the size of potential partners just because of the overwhelming success the last, since 2018 of our elementary bond measures, D and E. And with that, we're here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you very much. And so first, we'll take it out to the public. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item from our public? Okay. So seeing none from our audience, do we have anyone, any of our board members wishing to speak on this item? I do see Dr. West, Trustee Irvin, and let me screen out of here. And then we'll start with Dr. West.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work on this. I have to say, when we passed D and E for the elementary schools, I didn't know much about bonds. I've never really been a part of that. And the last few years, seeing the work that's been able to be done on our elementary sites is so impressive. And we would not have been able to do a lot of those projects if we didn't have those bonds. So I'm a true believer in what we can do for our students with the passages of the bonds. And I believe on page 6 in red, you have the costs for homes that are, say, $300,000 to $500,000, which is, I think, our median home prices. And when I look at how much per month it will cost families, I don't think they realize this, because when we pass bonds, we're talking about millions of dollars, and people are like, oh, millions of dollars, that's so much money, and I can't afford that. But when you break it down to $7 to $12 a month per household, I'm not a Starbucks coffee buyer, but I know a lot of people are. That's 1 or 2 Starbucks coffees a month. And, you know, it's just, for such a little amount for each household, there's such great work that can be done. And so I think it's important that people understand exactly how this breaks down. And I appreciate you guys putting this in red, because I think it really clarifies it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary Wood, much. The Trustee West. Trustee Irvin?
Yes, I would like to echo Trustee West in that a lot of great work went into putting this together. I appreciate that. One, I also wanted to point out, as Trustee West did, about the cost and the cost of home ranges. And so I understand. So what I'm understanding is that this is based on the assessed value of the home that the county gives homeowners, the assessed value based on when you purchase the home. So if you've owned your home for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, when you purchased it 20 years ago or 10 or 15 years ago, it's based on that assessed value. Even though we're in a a market of, recently, really increased refinancing. They don't take that into account now that you're usually a lot of people refinance to remodel homes and then their balance goes up because they have used that equity or pulled that equity out. That doesn't impact that, does it? Increase it?
That is correct. Your assumptions are correct, if I understand right. It's based on the assessed value at the time that the transaction was made or the ownership changed. So no matter if the homeowner refinances the home, because now he or she has equity in the home, it does not change the assessed value.
Okay, that's clear. And hopefully somebody, some way we can message that, to voters when we do that, so they won't get, like they say in the car business, sticker shock.
Yeah, that was, sorry, Trustee Irvin, go ahead.
Yes. Oh, no, and then I just wanted to follow up with, here's our chance now with the high school bond, and now that as a district we're talking about equity. Here's our chance now as a community to bring equity to our high schools based on, bond measures. We got the bond measures and done some outstanding work with our elementary schools that are taking place now. And now we have the opportunity to bring equity here with our high schools to bring them up to standards, because I see bonds as equity now that we've got them for our elementary schools, and that we enhance the quality of our education, the quality of our neighborhoods, the quality of our families, and our staff of our schools by upgrading and updating our high schools now, just like we're doing with our elementary school districts. So this is a bond about equity now. So I just wanted to point that out, Mr. Zerley. Thanks.
Yeah, to speak to your comment about sticker shock and getting the information out, I mean, that was the point of the slide. And also our partners have suggested that an effective bond campaign will help us improve our success rate, sharing the good news that, if you break it down monthly, it's not as bad as as it is if you look at it bi-monthly or yearly. I'm sorry. And so with a good, effective outreach campaign, we can share the good news of what this would mean.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice President Brown?
Yes. First of all, I have a question. The bond oversight committees, and this, I guess, would be for our attorney. We already have a bond oversight committee for Measures D and E. Since we're two separate districts, do we need a full separate committee for the high school bonds?
No, in fact, you can appoint the existing standing committee to serve as the committee for the high school district bonds as well. Oh, okay.
So they are coterminous.
So, right.
High school district serves additional.
So with regards to that piece, there are going to be some conflicts that you will need to resolve and appoint some additional memberships. But there could be some members on your existing committee
that could serve both.
That can serve in both capacities.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, I'm really excited about the prospect of high school bonds. Now, when we were here in this position 4 years ago, I remember the $1 billion book. I still have that on my desk at work because that gives me the motivation to make sure that we do the right thing. And as Trustee Irvin mentioned, this is all about equity and opportunity for every student. If we don't provide the same opportunities at each of our campuses, then how can we expect each of our students to succeed? So a bond measure that addresses the greatest needs in our district and helps us upgrade our oldest schools to the standards that our newest schools are at, and helps us take those newer schools even further in the direction of meeting standards and exceeding, where can we go wrong? I look at our community and I see what's happening because of the money that we're spending with Measures D&E. Most of that money is being spent back in our community by local people who are working on those projects and boosting our local economy. And I look at the homes around the schools and I see that whatever happens at the school, we talk assessed value for the amount of money that people pay with their taxes for these projects, but the actual value of those homes in the vicinity of those schools rises every time we make an improvement. The value of every home for the students who attend those schools increases for the families who live in them. The resale value will go higher depending on what we can provide in the way of education at each of our schools. So I see a bond measure as a huge public boost to our economy as we bring more projects, more opportunity, and a lot of positives back to the community. I worked tirelessly on the efforts for Measures D&E, and I thank those people who got involved with our community, or with our committee, and allowed us to really work hard and make sure that we got the vote that was necessary for the bonds to pass. And as I look at the numbers this time, we didn't pull quite as high as we did back 4 years ago. I think a lot of that is based on economic conditions that we're facing right now and so some political fear that people feel. But I have spoken with our consultants. I'm convinced that we can drive public opinion, we can share the right information, we can take people on tours and show them the conditions of the schools that need to be improved, and we can tug at the heartstrings of our voters and help them realize what our students need. Every student deserves the right to have the best education possible in the best facilities that we can provide. So I'm on board. I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that these bonds pass and that we can do what's right for every student. So I would like to ask Robin, one of our bond consultants, what it's going to take to make sure that if we put this on the ballot, we can win.
Is this better? Uh-oh. I'm not quite tall enough for that, but I think you can hear me, yes? Good evening. Thank you. There we go. I will just hold it there to make sure it doesn't fall. Thank you for having us here, President Lopez and the cabinet and all of you. It won't be easy. I'll say that. And once you place this measure on the ballot, should you choose to do so, you all know that an independent citizens advocacy group needs to come together. And what I'm hearing, Trustee Brown, is that you're willing to step forward into that role again, and but with lots of work and the partnerships that you have gained through this 2018 process and your successes with Measures D&E, we do believe that we have the opportunity to move the needle and press forward. Yes, we do. It needs to be volunteers on board, right? We need a strong backing and a well-funded campaign, but there is a path forward. Yes. Yeah. Questions?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that we can actually pull this off?
Oh, man. Wow. I believe that there's a path forward. We believe there's a path forward. It will be a lot of work, but we believe there's a path forward.
Well, thank you. I'm ready to put that hard work in and recruit others who will work equally as hard. And I just speak to the entire district that you have my dedicated support to make this happen.
And we will work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Marks?
Thank you. You've helped us with the last bond. I know you're very good at this, and I know you got the temperature of the public on this, so you know where we are. So I don't want to be the big downer in the room, but I just wanted to bring up a few issues. One, I wanted to see, I didn't know if you polled anyone on safety issues. I know that's been a huge one. I don't see that really in the 75-word statement. And so I know in the past that's been an issue, and I know it's on in a portion of the, I think I want to say Exhibit B. There was something that's talked about safety on campuses or, anyway, I don't know if that would be something that would poll negatively when you put it in a statement or not. But that was something I wanted to bring up to the board and see if that's something we wanted to add. Then I just had a couple of concerns because the inflation rate's gone up so much. We have our elderly population that's on fixed incomes, which even though it doesn't sound like a lot, it's still a lot to them. They come and complain at different meetings that we have, especially with our CFA board. We've had complaints over those, and those were for one high school. And so I was just concerned about that. And then the timing of this with the state bond and then the city putting a 1% tax on the ballot for this year for safety, specifically for hiring more police officers. And so those were concerns that I had only because that's going on our ballot and how that will affect us in this climate. So I want to see this bond pass. I want to see us be able to access the funding opportunities to improve our schools. I'm just concerned about the timing of it. I just feel like next year is a better year for it because we won't have the state bond on there. At least last year they were talking about putting the state bond on. This year they talked about putting it on. Is the state bond a for sure thing this year? Do we know? No, they're still.
No, it's not a for sure
They're
thing.
still trying to figure that one out. Okay, I wasn't sure if they had that. They have the same deadlines we do. And then I just didn't want to compete with the city safety tax. So I know that's going on for sure. That's been very high. That polling went really high. So I know the city's that one's gonna be on the ballot. So, and that's 1% tax, which is a pretty high tax for our city to put on. But anyway, so those were my concerns about it. I want to see it happen. I'm just in a state of concern over surmounting a few hurdles that might be coming our way.
So a couple of your points, just to be clear, it would need to be 24. It wouldn't be next year. We could do it next year, but we would need two-thirds support to do it in a non-regularly scheduled election year. So it would be pushed out to either June or November of '24, which then would be the next regularly scheduled election. And you talked about inflation rate. That's also true for our construction commitments. I mean, we're seeing cost escalation factors in the construction industry, 20 to 30%. So if we push this out 2 years, now and even going back to the $1 billion book, which is based on 2014-15, what is that now in today's economy? So while you make some great points, all those things impact us too by continuing to wait as well.
I know.
But it's a tough decision.
It is tough because I know when we did Gregory and Enoch's, we were quoted, I think, 80 million for our high schools, and we ended up 110, I think, for each one. So
just and also
that's, I mean, and that is in just 1 year.
We're hearing now for a new high school, it's $200 million.
Yeah.
So just put that in comparison to when Gregory was built. That's what we're hearing now to consider. If we're not, but if you were considering building a new high school. So that just tells you how the costs.
Well, thank you for the helpful dates. That helps a lot too, to know that it's 2 years and we'd have to do a 66% or 2/3 vote on that one to get it passed. Because I thought, oh wow, 55% is a possibility. So, well, we'll keep.
I believe the city needs 50% for their
the
for
1%. Yeah,
I believe.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that input. That helps me, even though I still have challenges, just concerns. We'll just say that. So I just want to see it pass because I want to see us be able to use it, as I said. So thank you.
Vice President Brown has a comment.
Trustee Marks, I share those concerns. And I know that that is something that we'll have to overcome with the efforts that we put forward. One thing I want to remind you is that the state bond is typically matching funds, and we need bond funds to be able to access those state funds. And I know from work that I did with Sylvan District in the past, we were not eligible many times for the matching funds because the timing of our funds didn't align. So I don't want us to be in a position where we wait and put off the possibility of a bond, and then we have to wait and fall to the bottom of the list for matching state funds to help us keep up with these escalating construction costs. So I think that timing is everything, and timing may be scary right now, but that just tells us how much harder we have to work to make sure that we pass the bond. So I'm optimistic, but carefully optimistic, and I'm going to work my tail off to ride the wave of optimism.
Definitely.
That's good.
I want to echo what Vice President Brown has mentioned. You know, those concerns are concerns of mine as well. But I think that, you know, this is something that's long overdue for our most needed high schools, and we see the effects of waiting, right? We can't allow not to put an effort in to try to get some funding for our most needed high schools. I think about when we did Measure D&E, hearing and seeing some of our elementary cafeterias and to seeing tiny spaces where we had to feed 800, 900 students into a tiny space. So you had some kids having lunch really early and some kids having lunch really late. So if you're a student of ours that for whatever reason you didn't come fed from home, you better hope that, you know, that you had the early lunch hour, right? So I think those kind of decisions are ones that that shouldn't be left up to chances. I think that by providing the right space and the right environment to learn, we can have it'll affect academic as well. So I think that yes, we need there are hard challenges, and you know, these times for whatever reason, for various reasons, aren't easy. But I think that we will see benefits and we'll see fruits from it. That's what we're seeing from D&E, and all we can do is give it our best shot, right? And make sure that we at least aim to achieve some funding for some of our high schools, or for all of our high schools, but especially those that are a little bit older, right? So I'm excited for this. It is going to be a challenge, as mentioned before, but it's a worthy fight to have, right? And take it out to the public and have them see the cost and benefits, right, of this bond, and assure them that as we're doing with bond measures D&E, we're going to be responsible about the money, and we're going to make it grow, right? We've seen what we can do with the little we got. Well, it was a lot, but in the $1 million book, it's just the scratch, right, of the surface. So, but we've been able to do good work with that, and so we hope that we're able to do that with this bond. Is there any other questions or comment from our board members? Okay, seeing none. Oh, yeah. Okay. Seeing none, this is a review of the draft, and so those will be coming up in a future board meeting. So we'll be moving on to B3, which is a public hearing and approval from Modesto City School Special Education Local Plan, Annual Service and Budget Plan for 2022-2023. Ms. Allen and Ms. Romero.
All right, well, good evening, President Lopez, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Noguchi. I am Christy Allen, and with me is Christina Romero. We're the Senior Directors of the Special Education Local Plan Area, or SELPA, and we oversee special education for Modesto City Schools. Tonight, we'll be providing you a report on our annual budget and service plans. And the purpose of this presentation is threefold. It'll provide the board with background information regarding the changes to our special education annual budget and service plans. Second, it will meet the requirements of holding a public hearing. And finally, we will ask that you look to approve our annual budget and service plans for next year. The annual budget and service plans align to district goals 1.6 and goal 3 to increase access to general education for students with disabilities while providing a safe and welcoming and respectful learning environment for every member of our school and community while ensuring effective district-wide communication for students, staff, families, and community partners. So federal law requires that special education local plan areas, or SELPAs, ensure a continuum of programs options are provided to meet the needs of students with disabilities for special education related services. The annual budget and service plans are required to be submitted to the CDE for approval to ensure that Modesto City Schools SELPA meets the assurances of access to special education and related services for compliance to all federal and state requirements. And I'm going to turn it over to Christina Romero.
Good evening. Last year, the California Department of Education adjusted the structure of our local plan to include additional sections that more clearly outline the services that we provide to students with disabilities throughout the SELPA. Each SELPA is then required to submit their annual budget and service plans that are adopted through public hearing to the CDE. The annual service plan that is located in your documents consists of a description of the special education services that we provide to preschool through transition age students here in Modesto City Schools. Also students that receive services that are through our contracted non-public schools, our preschools, and our private schools. These services are based on state recognized codes, and they document the physical location of these services that are provided throughout the district. And that's based on what we find in SACE, which is our Special Education Information System, our current data and programming. The SELPA leadership, in conjunction with our Community Advisory Committee chairperson, presented the local plan in draft version to our CAC, or Community Advisory Committee, that is made up of stakeholders throughout the district and local community that advise and provide us input in providing services for students with disabilities throughout the SELPA. The CAC was then provided with 30 days to review our plan and make any recommendations for adjustment or change. And now that the CAC review is complete, we're presenting the annual budget and service plans tonight to the Board of Education and Dr. Noguchi with the request for approval. If approved, we will then submit our plans to the County Office of Education's superintendent for approval prior to our CDE submission. So the next steps, at this time, we would like to request that we move forward to conduct a public hearing, following which we would request board approval of both the annual budget and the annual service plan. Questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Allen and Ms. Romero. First, I'll go out to the public. Is there any questions or comments? Ms. Debbie? Welcome again.
Thank you. Debbie Martinez, we're La Raza Parents Union. Thank you, girls. I just love both of you girls. And Mark, you trained them well. The only concern I have on all of this is documentation, data. So when our children that are in special need, and trust me, I'm also a surrogate parent, I go to juvenile hall, and the ones that I actually have to repiece together and work with juvenile hall are MCS students. And so data is very important. The communication, that dialogues from community parents back to SALPA is very vital. This parent with the issues with safety with her child, lack of data is blocking her from getting what she's requesting. So we just need to close the gap on communication for our families, especially the special needs ones. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else out there this evening? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board, and I have a question and comment from Vice President Brown, Trustee Irvin, and then Trustee West.
So I'm a broken record when I ask this question. I appreciate all the work that goes into these budgets. And I appreciate the efforts that happen within our district as we deal with the needs of our students. However, I'm always troubled by the fact that money that should be coming to us from the federal government never gets here, and that we have to dip into general education funds to supplement what should be provided from the federal government. Do you see anything, any hope on the horizon?
I so knew you were going to ask that question. So I brought some data for you. Since the 2019-2020 school year, the base funding for special education in the state of California has increased by almost $1 billion, beyond the cost of living and attendance adjustments that we received. So in 1920, our base rate was $557 per student, and last year it was increased to $715 per student, with the current proposal for the 22-23 school year to increase to $820 per student. So we see some relief. However, as you know, the federal share is still only 13% of the total cost of educating each student with a disability.
Well, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't make the public aware of the fact that we are underfunded and doing excellent work with what we do have, and thank you for all the efforts.
Thank you very much. Trustee Irvin? Okay, so, and then Trustee West?
I put mine off because I had the exact same question as Trustee Brown.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve? Oh, sorry. Okay, I will, sorry about that. We'll now close the public hearing and, sorry, where is that part? We will now close the regular board meeting, and we will now open the public hearing on hearing the Modesto City Schools Special Education Local Plan, Annual Service and Budget Plans for 2022-2023. And we'll hand it over to Ms. Allen and Ms. Romero. And so and so now, is there any comments from public on this agenda and the open public hearing? Seeing none, okay, I will now close public hearing and reconvene in the regular board meeting. And I'm looking for a motion to approve the Modesto City Schools Special Education Local Plan, Annual Service and Budget Plan for 2022-2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Trustee West, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we'll be moving on to B4, public hearing of review of draft local control and accountability plan, LCAP, and I will close again the regular open board meeting. And now open the public hearing for this agenda and hand it over to Mr. Godot.
Thank you, President Lopez. I'm actually going to hand it over to Senior Director Steve Hurst to present our local control accountability plan.
Let's see if I can make this work. Probably not. I'm short. All right. Good evening, President Lopez, Board of Trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. Again, my name is Steve Hurst. I'm Director of State and Federal Programs, and I'm here to talk about the 22-23 Local Control and Accountability Plan, or what we refer to as LCAP. So the purpose of today's presentation is to review the 22-23 LCAP development, its alignment with Modesto City Schools' strategic goals, review the LCAP, and then discuss the next steps involved. So the LCAP is a mandate from this state. It is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes that address state and local priorities. And so when you think of the local priorities, those are things that we have at our level. There are 8 state priorities that must also be addressed within the LCAP. Every year of this three-year plan, we must review and revise the plan as needed. We are moving now towards year 2 of the three-year plan. So when you look at the development of this plan and you think about the LCAP, it really is an overarching plan for our entire district, and it is the plan that draws together a lot of the different funding elements that we've had over the last year and a half, 2 years. You've had numerous presentations on how we are going to work with the funds that we've been given to support our students. All of those really refer back to our strategic goals and then come back to the LCAP goals. On the screen, you can see a list of various different programs. There's more than what's out there, but we have our ESSER money, we have our CARES money, we have our local control funding formula, which is the LCAP money. We have a new educator effectiveness grant, over $3 million that we have right there. So these all work together along with categorical, like your state and federal funds, Title I, Title II. So the LCAP development, again, is a three-year plan. Last year, you approved the 21 to 24 LCAP. This year is the 22-23. For this, we've had over 20 different meetings as well as surveys that we have sent out. We've involved a variety of our educational partners throughout this, which I'll go over here in a little bit. And the one thing I would say is that at each of those meetings, we get feedback from those meetings on how they felt about the effectiveness. And we have an over 98% satisfaction in that they felt like what they gave to us was valuable and that their ideas were listened to. So going over some of our educational partners, we do have an LCAP advisory committee. This committee has over 34 members in it. It represents students at all grade levels, elementary, junior high, high school. We also have parents representing all of our schools as well as our special populations. We involve community members. We involve staff members, both administrators, regular staff, classified, certificated staff. So we have a well-represented group. We also work with our DLAC committee, making sure that we have our EL input. We work with the special education to get that input. We send out surveys to students multiple times during the year, as well as parent surveys to get input. And this year, we actually worked with also the Student Advisory Council, asking the same questions of them and getting their direct input. So just giving an idea, and this is kind of just a graphical representation of how the meetings happen throughout the year. And obviously, it's a year-long process, but starting back in September, we started with some of our first surveys. Went out then, we have LCAP meetings, and there are 6 different LCAP advisory meetings that are held going through the different parts of the LCAP. We work with all of our educational partners, and so you can kind of look at that guidelines of how do we get from here's the LCAP, we are putting in place the initiatives, how do we review it, and then how do we come up with the revisions and the next plan. In addition to working with our community members and our educational partners, obviously we're working with Cabinet and Extended Cabinet. Teaching and Learning is a group of all the divisions bringing together, as well as our high performance team. We go out to our administrators and we have ongoing collaboration with our partners such as MTA and CSCA. And as obviously that open dialogue gives us good information on how they're feeling, as well as we're able to report on how we're doing. Our district goal alignment, this should be no surprise. The LCAP addresses all 5 of our district goals. In fact, the LCAP was aligned last year to, we have 5 goals in the LCAP, every one of them here. Now, I know that there's going to be a presentation relatively soon about new strategic goals. And what we'll look at is as the next 2 years progress in those goals, then updating the LCAP and the strategic goals so that they align so that we always have a 3-year rolling alignment and make sure that the goals align. Currently, the LCAP goals are going to be based upon the current strategic goals because the LCAP was a 3-year plan. So kind of just a quick review. Obviously, goal 1 is about academic achievement and career readiness. There are 6 different strategies, as you should be aware, under that. And then we have actions and services under each one of those 6 different areas. LCAP Goal 1 is our largest goal, and so the next 3 slides are going to highlight some of those actions and services that we have under that. When you think of this, what have we highlighted? What has come back? Support for STEAM or STEM has been a huge focus that we've seen come back. Professional development. Continuing the full day kindergarten, transitional kindergarten, obviously that's been a focus of the state and continuing to grow that. Making sure we're supporting our English language arts, our math. When you think about counselors and the counselors ratios, we've expanded counselors so we could lower the number of students that they're working with. We're developing more college and career supports, thinking of CTE and different pathways. Also making sure that we've brought in new elements for mental health support. These are not necessarily new. You should have seen these last year, and this is ongoing, but they make sense. And again, as you look at this, the assessment center, which supports our EL learners, definitely has been a big call about remediation and credit recovery. What do we do in this area? So we've expanded that and continue to expand our enrichment opportunities, provide services for our homeless and foster youth. And a lot of these are ongoing. In fact, there were elements that we had in the prior LCAP as well as the current LCAP. For goal 2, when you think of that, that's how do we make sure we have that high quality professional development for our staff, making sure our teachers are well supported in what they're teaching and that they can do this area, and really growing all of our people. And this is also where the character traits come in and making sure that we're promoting those within the school. So again, goal 2 is really about that quality development of our staff. When you think of some of the actions and services, instructional coaches have been key to that, making sure they're working with our teachers, helping them become better at their craft. Leadership development, things like restorative practices, which has really impacted overall our suspension rates and also just in general expulsion rates. Life skills training, those are all actions under this area. Looking at goal 3, that safe, welcoming environment, respectful learning environment. Again, there's 5 sub-goals under this particular area, and these are all areas that we need to address and continue to address on an ongoing basis. And really think about that technology aspect that comes under goal 3. How do we make sure we're providing technology in an effective manner? And we've all seen the needs for technology grow over the last couple of years. So when you look at some of the actions there is our safe schools, how are we maintaining the schools, making sure we have the ability to communicate with our families, those TC2 translators that have been brought. Last year we instituted the Parent Ambassador Program. That has been a huge success for us as a district. Again, increasing that parent to school communication. Things like, again, the technology supports the one-to-one student devices, the amount of time that we're up versus down as far as technology, and even providing those parent surveys that we need to make sure happen. Goal 4 is about making sure that we are fiscally and operationally sound, making sure that we have all of the things in place to make sure that we're spending our money in an effective manner and that we're monitoring and meeting all of those goals. And so when you think of that, again, that's the fiscal oversight and control, the LCAP oversight. Security, making sure we're protecting assets. We've invested a lot of money in those nighttime patrols and the cameras, et cetera. And obviously maintaining our school facilities to make sure, you know, we talk about bonds and we need to do more, but this is somewhat how this plan goes together, is making sure that all gets tied together. Goal 5 is about recruiting, hiring, and training. In other words, if we're going to do the best we can and provide the best education, we need the most qualified people we can find. We need to bring them to make them want to come to this district. We need to offer the right type of things for them. And so this is about that area, and also making sure that we're more efficient in what we do when you look at the 4 action areas under this goal. So some of the things here are, what are we doing and how are we funding to retain staff, recruit staff, build our college partnerships. Human resources staffing has grown over the last year, definitely had to. We've added more and more staff. They needed to be able to do that. They needed more staff to support that. And another part of that is the efficiencies. At one time, there was a piece of paper that would go through 18 different hands before somebody was actually hired. And I mean physically through 18 hands. It still goes through 18 people. It just does it in an electronic manner that can be done very efficiently and quickly. And so supporting those type of things has definitely helped us. So when I look at some of the highlights, and what I would say is this is just some. I think there's a lot of highlights of where we've had positive results in the 21-22 school year related to the LCAP. When you look at the reader-friendly and you start looking at some of those goal outcomes, it's hard to always read them because some of them are lagging indicators and some of them are current indicators. But we've expanded those counselor ratios. We've had equity training. Our parent ambassadors, as I called out, was a big one. Our fiscal controls, we have definitely been meeting all of our benchmarks on fiscal control. Look at what's happened with before and after school opportunities. And I think that we have definitely hit the mark with what we're doing with our LCAP in positive ways. There would be more I could put up there, but you can only do so many slides. That doesn't mean we don't have opportunities. When you look at academic achievement and attendance, those are statewide issues. We're experiencing those same issues. We've seen some fall off in some of our academic achievement. We definitely have seen a fall off in attendance this last year. What I would say is I think the actions we put in place have mitigated some of those, or it could have been potentially even more so. But again, we have to look at those areas and still continue to focus and see what we can do for those areas. When we look at the current plan and based on the feedback and input that we had and some of those things, we are looking at making some revisions that are minor, but also some additions to the plan. And so one of the things we're looking at is student support administrators. This would support our students who are struggling and need that additional support, making sure they're having good attendance, making sure that their IEPs are being held on a timely manner, making sure that we're really addressing some of those behavioral challenges that we have seen as the students have come back to in-person learning. Same thing for the SSTs. I mean, that process of hearing and finding out and coming together needs to be supported. We have heard over and over again that we need to make sure that we have more enrichment activities for our students. And we had some funding at the K6, K8 level. We didn't have that so much at the 9-12 level that came from the state. So wanting to enhance that, one example of that would be esports that we're going to offer at the 7-12 level. Our classified staff needs just as much development as our certificated staff, so there's some positions being proposed to help promote and guide that development for our classified staff. And everybody knows about the green initiatives, and obviously we need to keep it working and expanding upon those as part of our facilities and increasing our ability to hire and retain staff. So there's some money still in the LCAP focused on the HR area. So the current plan as it now stands would maintain all of our current goals with the noted additions that I just talked about, and really making sure that we continue to support those mental health areas, our enrichment areas, credit recovery, remediation, and make sure we have the staff for professional development. Those were the big call outs out of all of it, whether it was students, parents, staff members. Those are the things that we needed to really maintain and focus on, and so we have continued to do that. So as we move through this, the next steps, obviously, the LCAP, the reader-friendly version, is online on the district website, available for public review. Based on input and feedback, the plan would be to bring this back to the board on the June 20th and seek approval of the LCAP for the 22-23 school year, and then starting July 1 would be the implementation of that next plan. And with that, if there are any questions that I could help address.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take it out to the public. Ms. Debbie?
I take it, Steve, you took Melody's position.
I did.
I worked well with Melanie back in.
I took the place of somebody who
Yes,
replaced Melanie.
I worked her. Oh, that's right, there was one in between. Anyhow, LCAP, I've been with the LCAP from the beginning. I mean, when it first started over at La Loma is where we first started the LCAP about almost 11 years ago. So this is kind of like our parents' Bible, so to speak. And what I want to bring out in all of this is some concerns. Even tonight, I asked Brad, can you tell me where to get a uniform complaint procedure? Well, Deb, you know where to get that. Yeah, I know, but parents don't know. So here's the deal. In order to really follow the LCAP, we have to really follow the priorities that are in those buckets. And one of them is parent engagement and parent involvement and parent empowerment. And that's not really being utilized within this district. Our parents are not empowered. I mean, half the time they don't even know what a uniform complaint procedure is. And when we went to federal courts, that's one of the things the judge asked us. Did we submit the proper paperwork? But yet, if our parents don't know their rights, then we're stuck with believing what the district has to say. So parent survey is good, but where is our parent advisory committee? Where is it? I still can't get a hold of anybody to call up and say, you know what, this parent needs. So that's number one, because that's not really utilizing the LCAP according to the way state and federal has it developed it. Next thing would be this parent ambassador that you have here under highlights. It's misleading because if the parents don't know their rights, perhaps maybe under this classified employment that you guys have developed, parent ambassadors, in fact, I can even do the trainings. We'd like to see more training on know your rights for the parents. Since you guys have developed a parent ambassador, then let's teach that ambassador to teach our parents their rights, because they have a right to be empowered and be engaged. But they can't if they're not taught their rights. So that's another proposal for community would like to see next year. And then lastly, the student support, SST, is very needed, because under their supplemental funding, under the Every Student Succeed Act, they're entitled. Who are they? The English learners, the foster care, and the low income. And those are the ones I still have to fight for, to make sure that they're actually getting their fair share. So there's still some gaps. You guys are really doing some good work. I'm not gonna downplay that. But from my side of where I stand, there can be some more improvement for the parents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Is there any questions or comments from our board members? If not, I have one. Oh, we'll start with Trustee Marks.
Thank you. Appreciate all the information on this, as always. I know it's a lot to put together, and I remember when it was a placemat and it had all those columns.
Not anymore.
I know, this is great. So thank you for this. I really wanted to just comment on a few things that I was pleased to see. The student administrators that, wait, I had it and I circled it. Student support administrators in 712, thought that was really helpful. I know we used to have an assistant principal at the high schools, and it helped a lot with the engagement with the parents and the just interaction. The parents felt really attached to the school. And I remember when we had to cut those positions, we had a lot of tears in that boardroom from people because we were laying them off, and people were very attached to them because they spent a lot of time with them helping their students. So I'm glad we're putting some of those back. So that's helpful. And I had spoken with Mr. Herbst about the elementary schools and the VPs there, because we used to have those. And I know we have almost every school covered with a VP. So that's helpful, because they take the load off of the principal, so the principal can do most of the overseeing, and the VP can help with the interaction with the parents, which I think is really important, as Ms. Martinez brought up. As we build relationships with the parents, it helps them help their students, and everybody's more successful in that arena. I was wondering, and I'm not sure if these two items are something for the LCAP, but I'm going to ask them because I thought of them just recently. I had brought up about making the buses available to students with a less distance. So I know we moved it out to, I can't remember, I saw it in a board backup, but it was like a mile, and then it's still a mile or more, I think, for our elementary kids. But I wanted to see if we could increase the buses so that the students who don't have access to car, their parents may not have 2 cars, or they may not have a car at all, just to be able to get to school and drive them to school. So I think that would help with our attendance too, in some, especially rainy days. We should see how many students don't come on a rainy day. Some of our streets are really dangerous to walk down, and they don't have sidewalks, and they have to walk around puddles, and there's cars coming both directions on some of the streets just down a few blocks from here. So I've wandered down those streets a few times in the rain. So that was something I had thought of. I don't know if that's something the board would support, but it's something that and the LCAP committee, but it's something that I felt was important, especially for our students in more high poverty neighborhoods. And then also, I know we had a safety committee, we brought up with some great safety ideas. I didn't know if we were implementing some of those with the LCAP. I know we got the cameras, we did, some of those things were really important. I know we talked about this before, but the fences or making a single entry point, I know we've done that with almost, I think, all of our elementary schools, but if we could expand that as we move forward. I don't know if that's LCAP money or other funding, because I know it's very difficult to put fences around a high school. I know when they did it at Modesto High, it's been very helpful there. We did that a few years ago, but I know that was a good thing that we did, and I know Johansson's, I think, always had the fence around the whole campus, but some of our other schools are a little bit more difficult to do that because of the way they're laid out. They're just so spread out and the way the parking is, and some of them are a little bit more difficult. So I didn't know if those are things, but those were a couple of ideas that I had that, as I was going through this LCAP plan, and thought of bringing up to this meeting.
I can't address the busing one. Mr. Zerly
Okay.
might do a better job of addressing
Okay.
that. He probably knows regulations there. I can say that the safety committee recommendations is actually included in the LCAP, and currently all of the recommendations that came out of the committee had been implemented or put into place. In fact, it's a discussion of, how do we maybe move on from that to the next step, but it is in the plan currently.
Okay, good. Only because I've been here and we've had some of the safety issues happen at other school sites in California, but also in other states. And I know it came up as a big deal for us. And we did implement a lot of them. We put certain kinds of locks on the doors and made it so that intruders couldn't come into a classroom. But those were things that I know the public was very concerned about at the time and has really helped us in that process. So
So something that I can respond to that, we are planning to bring a report. We were going to do it in July, but we think it would be best to do it in August. I was talking to President Lopez just about our safety security measures and all the wraparound services relative to what does it mean to have safe schools. So there's lots that goes into that. So we're planning to present that in August, so we'll have more of a captive audience when school opens back up. So we'll bring that back.
okay, that's good. I just didn't know because I know because the LCAP is such a high percentage of our budget that sometimes it helps to just ensure that just for us to understand where the money is going and how it's helping our students and our staff in different ways. So, but I love all these ideas and I appreciate the new ones that are on here too and the expanded ones that we've worked on.
I'm going to add one more thing as far as the transportation, because I think that's the second time that you've brought that up in recent months. Currently, we have our route set for next year to change that. That's a huge change, and we couldn't make that happen between now and next year. However, we will be coming to the board in the fall or winter around potentially changes in boundaries, which would completely upend our transportation. So at that time, I would ask that you're reminded to ask that same request when we come to you as a board report to say we might want to consider either decreasing that amount of time, because that is many, many hours of work and is a big puzzle. So that will be coming back to you in the fall. So recognize we're not ignoring it. It's just a bigger task than it would seem. Mr. Zerly, do you want to add anything more to that?
No, you're absolutely right. We will be engaging in a study around our, based on your comment, either last board meeting or a couple board meetings ago, around our existing walk zones and what that would mean to decrease those in certain areas. So at least the board will be able to see the impact on what that would look like. But I would suspect that would be done sometime in the fall, as Dr. Noguchi states.
That's helpful, thank you. And I know with the state, they're really supportive of a lot of the transportation, at least so far. So we'll see if O'Donnell's bill passes on the transportation home to school transportation bill that he put forward. And that would help us too. And I know we bought a lot of buses. So I was hoping we could also take advantage of that at this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Brown.
Yes, I appreciate how the goals that we have set as a board are addressed in the LCAP. And I especially appreciate your focus on opportunities and where we still need to make sure that our emphasis is placed. And I'm very happy to see that academic achievement is at the top of that list. We need to do everything that we can to help our students overcome the learning loss that happened through the pandemic. And I know that the efforts district-wide are placed there, and glad to see that that's at the top of the list of where we can see our greatest improvement. So appreciate that focus.
Thank you, Vice President Brown. I did have a question, not so much on this year's plan, but we're looking out 2023, 2024 next year, and then we have another 3-year plan that we're building, correct?
We will, the new three-year plan would be 2024 through 2027. That would be the new 3-year. So obviously, it starts the cycle again, which is also why discussions have been about how do we, make sure the alignment of the strategic goals and the LCAP align together. So we're not always in I've got strategic goals have been updated, but I'm still working on a 3-year plan that is based on the old goals. So yes,
Right.
that would be the next plan.
Okay, so next plan would be 23, 24, correct?
Next year will be 23, 24, and that would be the update to the 21, 24 plan for that current year.
Okay. So the 3-year plan the next 3-year plan would start 23, 24.
Would start, let's see,
24,
22,
25.
23, 23, 20, would start 24, 25.
Okay, so we have about a year and a half out. When do we start creating that 3-year plan?
So basically what we'll do is this next year will be revision and update of the current year plan and working on that, and also the development of the revisions that we would then have for the 23, 24. And then starting, August of that year, we would actually then start the whole process of developing the 24, 25, really 24, 27 plan.
Right.
Taking into account what we've done over the last 3 years, as well as changes in what we need to look forward to do at that point. At that point, we'd have 3 years of pretty good data. We've had obviously a couple of non-good years for good data recently.
Great. And the reason why I asked that, because it's been mentioned of our parents being key to this process, is the sole reason why this was invented, right, in the state, because we want parent input. This is where they can affect actual change into our frame. And so I'm thinking, what does that process look like from today for that 3-year plan down the line? And how do we educate our parents? How do we instruct our parents? Because they can imagine something that they don't know exists, right? And so I would like to see the work, the layout within our DLAC committees, making sure that we're increasing our DLAC. I know we've been doing great work around that, and we're increasing our DLAC committees, our parent engagement, the work, but really start to think about the education around what the LCAP means and how can we actually be effective to our parents, right? So that when that goal, that 3-year plan comes around, we have prepared parents ready to engage in a conversation where they understand what's at stake and how they can actually affect the change. So, I really love the plan and the work that we've been doing. It's one area that it's been important to me of how do we get more engaged and more effective parents in the process, right? So, I know that it's been conversations we've been had with Mark, with Sarah. So I want to see what that framework looks like in getting parents engaged for the buildup of that next 3-year plan.
Okay. One thing I will say is obviously our LCAP Advisory Committee, it includes parents from all areas, I would say. I mean, we have elementary, we have junior high, high school, and again, we're trying to make sure we have representation also on that. Additional to that, the surveys that we had over 1,800 responses this year to our parent survey related to LCAP. As we get that information, we had the student surveys, and I think we've got to make sure we focus on both, not that area. Working with the EL, and then one of the things we're looking at is more work with Mady Herrera's group this next year on how do we get out even more information to the parents on some of that information for training, and also work with our EL learners through Marisol Moda's department. But no, I don't disagree that we have opportunity there. I think that's definitely still the case. I think we've done a good job, but a good job doesn't mean you've gotten a hold of everybody. So I think we still have opportunity to work that way.
Definitely, we can never have enough parent engagement. That's obvious. I know we've been doing great work, but we can, like you mentioned, we can always do more. And more than anything, take the opportunity in the areas that we're growing and those captive audience of the parents, and start laying that groundwork to have effective feedback into that 3-year LCAP plan that's coming up, right? Making sure that we're doing a good work with the one we have currently, but building to have a stronger 3-year plan in the future. but I appreciate all the work everyone's been doing. So is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I have anyone from? Yeah. I just want to check in with our teams folks. Do they have any questions or comments? I don't hear anything, so I'll close the public hearing on this item. And now, do I hear a motion to approve the draft of local control and accountability plan, LCAP?
This is a report only, public hearing. The approval process will hopefully be at the June 20th meeting.
Thank you very much for that. And so now we'll be moving on to B5, which is the public hearing and review draft of 2022-2023 budgets for all funds. Mr. Surley, but I'll go ahead and close the open board meeting. And now I'll reconvene us in the public hearing on this agenda and send it over to Mr. Surley.
Thank you, President Lopez. Good evening again, trustees. This, just like the LCAP prior, is a public hearing. It's a draft report of our proposed budget, which will be brought back in 2 weeks for the board to approve our annual operating budget. The two shy employees in the back are Senior Director Michelle Price and Director 2 of Financial Services, Kim Kamstra. Those two employees and their staff are solely responsible for preparing our budget and monitoring it for the whole year. Our annual budget is the reason Strategic Goal 4 was written. And Strategic Goal 4 is to ensure that our district is fiscally and operationally sound. And we have what you're being presented tonight is a $450 million general fund spending plan. And so we have to ensure, when it says operationally sound, that we have the LCAP priorities in it, and we have other operational issues for the district that are included in our annual spending plan. The May revision drives the revenue included in our proposed budget, as the governor's May revision is the last step in the state budget process, or next to last step in the state budget process, before the legislature adopts the state spending plan. And until a state budget is approved, the May revise is our best assumptions for revenue budgeting information. However, tonight, as we move on, maybe more about what revenue is not included in our proposed budget as to what is. The state legislature has a spending plan that they have to approve by June 15th, or else they face penalties. But there remain many differences between the legislative spending plan and the governor's May revision, and we'll talk more about that as we go through this presentation. So this is an amazing year for funding for educational agencies, and the minimum guarantee for this year is projected to be $110 billion. Now, when I say minimum, that is the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee. So in some years, as this year is the case, we will get more than that minimum guarantee. Some years, when the economy is bad, the state can't afford the minimum guarantee, and so we get less. For us, only the 6.56% COLA is included in the proposed budget, and all other items will wait until the state budget is approved. And you heard earlier during the local SELPA plan, the special education funding, and we're pleased this year that our special education base rate gets the 6.56% COLA, and they are now up to $820, as noted earlier, per ADA for special education. There's also a proposal by the governor to increase the local control funding formula base funding that would allow school districts to mitigate the impact of rising cost and local budget concerns. The governor's proposal, in addition to the 6.56% COLA, would give us an overall increase to the local control funding formula of about 10%. But our numbers only reflect, as we were advised by the County Office of Education, to include just the 6.56% COLA. Everybody agrees that's going to happen no matter what the two houses in Sacramento agree to. And then also, the governor has proposed an $8 billion one-time discretionary fund. And for us, $8 billion, our share of that equates to about $37 million for Modesto City Schools. That would come to us one time. The governor's proposal is discretionary, so that means it's up to the school board to determine how we spend those funds. And those $37 million are also not included right now in our proposed budget. Other major components of the May revision are average daily attendance, or ADA, proposals. Currently, in the May revision for 22 and 23, the governor has proposed to fund our ADA based on current or prior year or the average of 3 prior years. Right now, we're funded on the greater of the current or prior year. We all know what this year has done to our enrollment numbers due to the pandemic, and so we're grateful that the governor has proposed a 3-year average for going forward for our prior year's ADA. Just a reminder of what a budget is. It's just a policy document. I mean, it comes to us once a year as an annual spending plan and reflects the philosophy of the board, administration, and our community. It is a financial plan. The multi-year projection will show us where we've been in the prior year and also where we're going, and also a communications device that should allow the district to share our strengths and challenges with the community through integration with the local control accountability plan. The focus of our budget development is on the district's budget and fiscal solvency. We base, again, as stated, our revenue assumptions on the governor's January budget proposal, and we update those for the May revision. And then expenditure assumptions are based on staffing levels per enrollment projections, step and column salary increases and pension rate increases for our employees, site and department budgets, as well as scheduled or planned capital outlay and debt service obligations. As previously mentioned, the May revision includes a 6.56% COLA, and then this just shows you what that means to the base rates as well. And you'll notice in the middle, there's an additional LCFF investment with an asterisk. That's the additional governor's proposal that would bring the total increase to about 10%. Right now, we're not including that. It's not reflected in our budget development, but it will be reflected when the state budget gets approved and we see the details around the funding rates for the local control funding formula. Our ADA assumptions are 21-22 is based on the assumption of greater or of current or 2019-20 ADA. The May revised proposed language of current year enrollment adjusted for pre-COVID-19 absent rate is not reflected here. That's something we're watching that did not get included in the legislature proposal. And I'll talk more about that later on what that means or what it could mean to the revenue for us as well as going forward. This just shows you a simple pie chart of our revenue. Clearly, the largest piece is the local control funding formula at 81%, state revenue 11%, and federal revenue is 7% of our budget. Other revenue assumptions, we generate a base funding increase. The 6% COLA gives us an $11.2 million increase to our base funding and a $2.9 million increase to our supplemental and concentration grant funding. Other revenue assumptions in this budget proposal, federal revenue, state revenue, local revenue has all decreased to the total of $86 million. That does not mean we have to reduce our expenditures by $86 million. These are one-time funds that were received strictly probably for pandemic relief. And so if we We're not counting on them for the next year because they were given to us in one time. If it happens to be we didn't spend it all, then we'll rebudget that in the next year. So this will be reflected at a future budget update. You heard earlier about contributions to special education because special education is a program that's underfunded. And I would just say not only by the federal government, but by our state government as well. And so although we're pleased that special education did get a COLA this year, there's not additional funding added to special education. It remains underfunded. And our estimated contribution for the program this year is $46.3 million. Other contributions would be routine restricted maintenance. That's a statutory requirement. We're required to set aside a certain percentage of our expenditures for routine restricted maintenance. And so that is $12.4 million when we talk about contributions to other programs. Revenues are largely controlled by the state. However, the board decides how to spend the funds that are received. And that would be for employee compensation, instructional programs, support services, facilities, et cetera. However, the majority of our budget is spent on people. 81% of our total proposed general fund budget is salaries and benefits for staff, or 83% of our proposed unrestricted general fund budget. Clearly, it takes people to educate people, and that's why it's the largest percentage and majority of our budget. This just shows the pie of our expenditures, and if you added up the certificated salaries, classified salaries, and benefits, so that would be the portion that goes to our employees with 4% books and supplies and 10% for other services as defined. Some expenditure assumptions also in here is increasing salaries and benefits due to step and column movement. That would be $3.1 million. And then also multiple impacts to employee benefits. Mid-year health and welfare negotiated increases, $1.2 million is included, as well as more pension reform costs. So STRS for next year is a $4.2 million increase, and PERS is a $1.6 million increase for next year. Outstanding items is contract negotiations. Although we reached a tentative agreement with the Modesto Teachers Association on May 20th, there's nothing in this budget for that. That will get updated in the budget at a later time. And management and CSEA are unsettled for next year currently, and nothing is included in the budget right now for potential settlement. All restricted categorical dollars that we allocate are fully expended. So if we get $100,000, we plan to spend $100,000 for our restricted categorical programs. And we do eliminate carryover and one-time expenditures that are included in this year. They're eliminated in this year's spending plan. This shows you, if you look here, it shows our unrestricted and restricted revenues and expenditures. The middle column is restricted. And you'll see the deficiency of $56 million there. That shows you, that's why we need contributions to special education and contributions to routine restricted maintenance. So that just shows you there how it works, how it translates into our financial system. And if we look at unrestricted, there's a decrease of $10 million in our proposed budget. That would be what we call deficit spending. But as I mentioned earlier, there will be substantial revenue increases once the state budget is adopted and we know the full impact of the state budget when it's approved. Ending fund balance, we have required 3% of our general fund expenditures maintained, as well as a board-designated additional 3%. So we have 6% designated for economic uncertainty, and that is maintained in the current year and subsequent years of our multi-year projection. And then other areas in our ending fund balance, we do track our unspent LCAP supplemental concentration grant funds, and we identify that in our ending fund balance as well as one-time expenditures. This shows us, really, if you did, this is our multi-year projection. If you go to the bottom, we're able to maintain a healthy unassigned. This is an unassigned reserve percentage. And keep in mind, this is without the additional revenues that we expect to receive once the state budget is assigned. But we do have all of our anticipated expenditures in here for staffing, with the exception of negotiated settlement agreements. This is just a requirement. Education Code 42127 requires us to provide for public review and discussion reserve balances. And so you can see the balances in the different funds, Fund 1, 11, 14, and 17. That equals $89 million. It's just a requirement we have to provide in the public hearing for the public to view. And this is all of our other funds in the district. And we're pleased to report, as we do annually, that no district fund is projected to have a negative ending fund balance at this time in this spending plan. Multi-year projections are required. They are projections. They're not predictions. They change regularly on us. It's based on today's assumptions, and as we know, those change in a matter of a couple months with the state and with the state's economy. But although we do show a deficit in our multi-year projection, that is gone by 24-25 under our current assumptions, and we do maintain a healthy ending fund balance in this spending plan for the current year in our 2 projection years. Next steps would be to approve the budget on June 20th. That would be the next step. I don't anticipate any changes to these numbers that you see tonight. If there are, we will highlight that for the board before approval. We do have to add, as mentioned, approval of the Modesto Teachers Association tentative agreement and implementation into our budget and multi-year projection. Once the state adopts the budget, we have 45 days to make a revision if there's substantial increases. We expect substantial increases to our revenue, so we will do a 45-day revision. And again, proposals from the May revise not reflected in the budget is increases to the local control funding formula base rate to help us mitigate cost increases. 21-22 ADA adjustments. I just want to talk real briefly about this. The governor has proposed to mitigate our considerable absences in this school year, the 21-22 school year, by adjusting our current year ADA using 19-20 absence rates. What that means is, let's say we get funded on ADA. So if we have 93%, 94% attendance rate, that's what we get funded on. This year, during the pandemic, let's say it's 85%. So there's a decrease. The governor is proposing to mitigate that one-time drop this year, allow us to use the percentages from the prior year, which are much higher, to generate revenue, which now, if you talk about our 3-year average, now that raises our first year in the 3-year average, and so that provides us stability moving forward. That's the governor's proposal. It's not included in here. One-time Proposition 98 discretionary funding is not included in here. As I mentioned, we estimate that to be about $37 million, and all of those would have significant impact on our assumptions positively for our multi-year projection. And with that, I will answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much. I'll go out to the public to see if there's any questions or comments. Debbie?
Thank you, Tim. And by the way, I am still chairperson for Stanislaus County on California School Choice on Prop 98. A lot of money on the table. I just want to say the quality of service. This is a public entity, and the quality of service is still not up to par according to the LCAP. And so we're asking on a bond measure to ask community to dig a little deeper into their pockets so that the landscaping of our schools look nice. And by the way, I drive around, and when I do go to school sites, it does look good out there. And so on top of asking the community and public to dig a little deeper in their pockets, I stand as community under the Latino Community Roundtable, Advocate for Justice, and the list goes on, for some better quality of service in this district. This is not something new. This is what we've been harping on, and there's a lot of money on the table. And then we also have where we just got done reviewing the LCAP, and in that, it has the revised edition of student support for SST. That's where I come in. And I go onto the sites, and I'm saying, okay, little Sally and little Junior from Southside and Westside, they need some more support. They need an IEP of 504. And so when we get from a 504 to an IEP and we close the gaps by the third grade, then we have where the special ed funding is unfunded. So now we have gaps for these kids. And so I'm just asking that MCS does a better service. Just do some better service on our children as far as the quality with all of the money that belongs to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll come back to the board. Are there any questions or comments? I have two, one from Vice President Brown.
Yes, with regard to the required 3% general fund reserve, is that a floating number? Say we get that extra kick that comes from the state budget. Would our reserve then be increased to 3% of that money as well?
Yeah, you make a great point, Trustee Brown. It is floating. I mean, so as we get more dollars, and it's based on our expenditures. So as we get more dollars and our expenditures grow, then the 3% will grow. But it comes back down at the end of the year if we don't spend everything we said we're going to spend as well. So it's constantly floating. But a point in that is for every restricted dollar we receive, we have to set aside 3% of our unrestricted dollars. We can't set aside our restricted funds for economic uncertainty. So as we get more restricted dollars, it does make that 3% rise throughout the year.
So any extra money, if it is restricted, we take from other sources to make sure that we maintain our reserve.
It comes from our ending fund balance on the unrestricted side. So yes, any dollar that gets increased comes from our unrestricted available balance to cover that 3%.
Complicated formulas.
It is. That's why they're the experts.
Thank you. Trustee Marks?
I'm happy that we still have the 3% and that we can increase it to 6% sometimes. So that's always helpful, especially if there are uncertainties in the future, which come and go with that wave. But I had a question about, so with the deficit spending, will the county still give us a positive certification when we submit our budget to them?
Yeah, it's a good question. The certification comes at first interim. So the way the budget certification works is you either have a positive budget or you have a negative budget. Those are the only two options.
Okay.
There's not a certification until first interim. So at that point in time, if we couldn't meet our obligations through the multi-year projection, then we would become negative in December. But right now, it's just either an approved budget or they don't.
Okay. It looked like it's still going to be positive. Because of the deficit spending, wasn't sure if they would, ding us for that. Because I know we get the letters from them that say, well, your deficit spending, please be cautious and please be careful. So, but they still certify us as positive. So I said, okay, good. I'm hoping that's the same as this year is going to end up that way. Because that funding we won't be receiving the funding from the state, or we won't have it before July 1st, I don't believe.
Correct, and that's part of the reason why it's hard to have a certification for adopted budget, because we're dealing on unknowns until there's actually a state budget that's signed. But at first interim in December, then that's when it would be positive, or negative, qualified or negative certification.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and reconvene the regular board meeting. And this is a review only, so we'll move on to B6. B6 is approval of authorization to utilize the interlocal purchasing system TIPS Region 8 contract number RCSP 211001 for high school stadium field and track conversion. Mr. Zerly.
Yeah, thank you, President Lopez. Typically, construction contracts are in consent, but we are excited to bring this contract forward for discussion and approval for the board as it relates to our three stadium surfaces for both field and track surfaces. So we're going to review our existing stadiums. We have some data on comparable field and track data for our section in the CIF. We will review stadium, field, and track renderings and talk about next steps and allow for any questions the board may have. We believe this aligns with strategic goal 4.3, investing in school facilities and infrastructure for safe and clean facilities. We have three high school athletic stadiums in Modesto City High School District. Downey has a synthetic playing field only. It was first installed in 2007 and replaced just recently in 2019. None of our three stadiums or none of our high school tracks have a synthetic track surface. League track meets cannot be held at our stadiums currently due to the track surface. There is some, we do compete in two leagues. Our smaller high schools, Johansen, Beyer, and Davis, compete in the WAC. Our larger schools, Enoch, Gregory, Modesto High, and Downey, compete in the CCAL League. Those four high schools, I'm told, go to Turlock every other week to compete in the track meets. They either compete at Pittman or Turlock High School, depending on the school. So we do have a competitive disadvantage with some of our league counterparts when it comes to track surfaces. We do compete in the Sac Joaquin section for athletic events. That would be the CIF Sac Joaquin section. Approximately 88 schools compete in this section for divisions 1 through 4. There's about 200 total for divisions 1 through 7, but we've identified divisions 1 through 4 because that's where our 7 high schools compete in the Sac Joaquin section. 77 of those 88 schools have access to both synthetic fields and tracks, either owned or shared. And an example of a shared would be a synthetic field. I mean, we have one field, but it could be shared amongst all of our high schools. So that's what it means when you see shared. One school has a synthetic field with a dirt track, and that would be Downey High School. And when I say dirt, it's clay cinder is what but it's typically referred to as dirt because it's not a synthetic field. And 10 schools have natural grass field and dirt track combination, with 6 of those being Modesto City High Schools. All of our tracks will be 8 lanes, which is the minimum required for CIF regional meets. This is a rendering of Downey, what Downey will look like with their existing field, and then a new track. And you can see the lines in the track as well. This one is Johansen High School. Johansen High School would receive the new field, not only the new field, but also the new track surface. And then this is Gregory High School as well. And so the interesting thing, if you just look at these different, sorry, let me go back real quick. If you just look at this one, Johansen, and the corners or of the track versus Gregory, this is not something we're creating. This is how Gregory's track was put in, and so they have these different corner areas and I don't know if there's a corner on a circular track or not, or an oval track, but you can just see the difference between that's already there, so we would surface what is already there for Gregory. We're asking for approval of the contract to add synthetic turf fields at Gregory and Johansen stadiums, and also to prepare the tracks for a synthetic surface at all 3 stadiums, Gregory, Johansen, and Downey. We have identified $5.4 million from our existing high school facility improvement fund, as well as our existing high school redevelopment fund. So this would not require any general fund dollars to be spent right now on the fields or tracks. We plan to have these completed as early as August 15th and August 22nd to meet the high school football schedule. We are changing football schedules as needed to allow for the turf installations if this moves forward. In a future board meeting, we will be asking the board to approve the synthetic surface installation, the rubber track for the 3 stadiums, as well as bringing a plan back for track surfaces at our remaining high schools. I know a lot of talks about equity. We have 7 high schools. What are we going to do for the remaining 4? This was brought forward simply from a competitive standpoint for our existing stadiums that we have. How can we bring our stadiums up to competitive equity with surrounding schools, with surrounding leagues? But we do recognize that we do have tracks at every high school. And so what would that take to update those tracks right now to a synthetic surface so we have equity across all 7 of our high schools? And so with that, we'll entertain any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go out to the public. Is there any questions or comments?
I have a question, Debbie Martinez, Community. Under the ALCAP, the 8 priorities also includes school climate. And so are you guys just going to visit the track and field? Because I know over at Downey, they had issues with the bleachers. So are we going to improve all of it or just some of it? Will bleachers be looked at? Will they be corrected? Will they be make sure that they're safe? And because there was an issue out at Downey where a student had gotten injured on those bleachers. And so I never really brought it to the board because I really didn't think that was a priority at that time. Child got medically taken care of, but I'm just concerned about the bleachers as well. So if we can just make sure that they're all safe as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our stadium bleachers are part of an annual inspection that we have. We will find out if there's issues at Downey that we need to check specifically, but all of our stadium bleachers as well as gymnasium bleachers are part of an annual inspection for safety reasons.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from our board members? I see one. Trustee West?
Thank you, Mr. Zierle. I'm really glad that the last point is that you have a plan for the 4 remaining high schools, because we do want to make sure that all of our high schools have opportunities for this. Do we have a timeline at all for those 4 schools?
I do not, but I will, once this moves forward, hopefully starting tomorrow, then I will have the designers give me a proposal for the other 4 high schools. We want to see, I mean, obviously, it's how are we going to fund those? We want to see what is included in the state budget as far as one-time dollars. What do we have? What do we have that's carried over from this year into next year? Where can we fund those? But we are going to be working on a plan for those other 4 that the board will see at a subsequent meeting.
Would if a bond was passed, could that money be used to help with the other 4 schools with their tracks?
Oh, absolutely. It's written into one of our high priority areas of physical education and athletic events, stadiums. And the great thing is we could move forward, and if the bond were to pass, we could actually pay ourselves back with bond dollars if or when that time comes. But we want to have a plan that we can bring forward with or without a successful bond campaign because of the equity reasons stated.
Thank you. I just know our stadiums are used for so many things, and they can become such great community events. So it benefits our community if we're able to have, good facilities. Thank you.
And use less water as well.
Thank you. Had a comment from Trustee Marks.
Yes, thank you. This is awesome. I remember when we did Downey Synthetic Field, that was a huge deal. And we knew it was going to take some time to dig that whole thing up and do it properly. So, and I know it has to be replaced every 7 to 10 years. And so I'm believing that if we move forward with this, that will be the same process. We'll have to set aside funding for replacement for the next few years, but it'll also save us in watering costs. So that'll be helpful. But I think it's good. Go ahead.
Yes, we continue to fund the replacement. As you saw, it was 12 years. We actually
That's a
had the
long one.
dollars set aside to fund the Downey replacement when the time came. And keep in mind, Downey had a dirt track and then a synthetic field, so that's not ideal for longevity, and we got 12 years out of that one, so we're hoping to get at least that, if not more, out of these three.
Yeah, that was great. I was pleased with that, even though the cost went up over time, but it still was like, wow, we still have the money there for it. So that's good. Well, I'm in total support of this and glad that we can at least provide this for our students and make sure that they have good tracks to run on and that they're synthetic, which will be awesome. Won't have to bother with the rain. It won't be muddy and, well, I don't know if it'll be slippery, but it won't be muddy. So.
Thank you very much. Vice President Brown?
Yes, I'm pleased to see that we would be addressing the needs of both of our leagues that our students participate in, and that we could host events for both of those leagues. Also, you mentioned that the synthetic fields would be going in and timing for the start of the football season. So how will that affect our training? Will we be able to train on grass surfaces at all schools while that construction is underway?
They will have to make some adjustments this summer, so provided the board approval this evening, then we've already communicated with our district athletic director, Donnie Wallace, about getting together with our ADs and football coaches at the 3 schools that have stadiums that would be impacted by the construction this summer. I would venture a guess that they would all be extremely happy to move their practices for the summer to an alternative location.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this move forward, and I remember what an extreme effort it was to raise public donations for the first synthetic field, and now to know that we can come in and address 2 other schools with those fields, plus add the tracks for all the stadiums. Our public should be very grateful for the fact that we have these funds available and are able to take care of this all together at once.
Trustee Brown, I'd be remiss if I didn't share that we also began planning for the possibility, if construction were to go a little bit longer than anticipated into the beginning weeks of the season, that we would work through some alternative plans based on scheduling. Not ideal, but again, I think that would be well received to get the work done.
Sounds good. So now, do I hear a motion to approve the authorization to utilize interlocal purchasing system TIPS Region 8 contract number RCSP 211001 for high school stadium field and track conversion? Moved by Trustee West and seconded by Trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Can we start construction tomorrow?
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And we'll be moving on to B7, approval of revision of Modesto City Schools and Modesto Teacher Association collective bargaining agreement for the 2022-2023 school year. Mr. Henderson.
Good evening, and thank you, Board President Lopez, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. I am pleased to report that negotiations between the district and Modesto Teachers Association have concluded, and I bring for your approval this evening the revisions to the collective bargaining agreement for 2022 to 23. For this bargaining cycle, you recall when we opened that only salary and health and welfare benefits articles were open in the contract. We had very productive and collaborative sessions and are happy to have reached an agreement in a relatively short time. Some of the main provisions of the agreement include a 6% ongoing increase to the salary schedule, 2 one-time off the salary schedule payments to each member, Continuation of the Professional Development Initiative for receipt of up to 1% of base pay for completion of up to 12 hours of professional development. Third year, I think now that's been a priority initiative in the district. Increases to the flat rate extra duty stipend and hourly direct schedules for salary schedules, and the RISE program, some additional language as well as a compensation adjustment. We're continuing with the substitute teacher daily rate that we've established on to next year, and also an additional $100 a month in the district contribution toward the purchase of district health and welfare benefit plans. That'll increase from the current $700 a month to $800 per month for those folks who enroll in plans from the district. We have some clarifying language regarding the cash and lieu provisions and a slight increase in the MTA Medical Benefits Trust, which contributes toward benefits to their retirees. MTA ratified the agreement with their membership on May 26th with overwhelming approval, and the fiscal impact of the agreement has been listed out in the agenda item. So with that, in accordance with the Government Code Section 3547.5 and following the certification process, it's recommended that the board approve the revisions to the Modesto City Schools and MTA's collective bargaining agreement for 2022 to 23.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna go out to the public. Is there any comments on this item? Seeing none, coming over to the board, any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the revision of the Modesto City Schools and Modesto Teacher Association collective bargaining agreement for 2022, 2023?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President.
Oh, Mejia?
Moved by Vice President Brown and seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And now we'll be moving on to B8, approval of Associate Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction / Professional Development effective July 1st, 2022 through June 30, 2024. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you again, Board President Lopez and trustees. The Associate Superintendent of CIPD, I think you're familiar with it, called now, is central to organizing and administering all the functions of the office related to curriculum development, selection of instructional materials, and guiding the instructional program. In addition, the position leads a robust initiative I just mentioned actually with our professional learning throughout the district. All those activities to build capacity among our employees and ultimately improve student achievement. Following a successful interview process, Mr. Mike Rich has been selected as the Associate Superintendent. We are fortunate to have selected Mr. Rich, who served in many roles over his nearly 22 years in Modesto City Schools, such as classroom math teacher, district math coordinator, math instructional coach, associate principal of curriculum and instruction, and then principal at Davis High School, director of innovation, and most recently, senior director in CIPD. We're excited about what Mr. Rich will bring as he drives the district's curriculum and professional learning plans in Modesto City Schools. As a cabinet level position, an individual contract is presented to the board for approval. Government Code Section 54-953 states in pertinent part, quote, prior to taking final action, the legislative body shall orally report a summary of the recommendation for final action on the salaries, salary schedules, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency executive as defined in subdivision D of section 3511.1 during the open meeting in which the final action is to be taken, end quote. The following is the required verbal summary of the employment agreement. The agreement is from July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2024. The annual salary is $173,305 plus applicable longevity for 222 responsibility days, and Mr. Rich is afforded health and welfare benefits, including 12 days of sick leave, consistent with other certificated administrators. The agreement also provides for payment of ACSA, Association of California School Administrator, membership dues and other professional organizations as deemed appropriate by the superintendent, not to exceed $1,200 per year. As this is a replacement of an existing position due to vacancy, there's no fiscal increase on the ongoing costs for the associate superintendent position. Thank you for your patience through those details. It's recommended that the board approve the associate superintendent curriculum and instruction professional development contract for Mr. Mike Rich, effective July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you very much. Do I have any comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have any comments from our board members? Seeing none, can I hear a motion to approve the Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction / Professional Development effective July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2024? Mr. Rich.
I'll second.
Moved by trustee West, seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to B9, approval of amendments to existing employment agreements for Associate Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and Chief Officer contracts effective July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2024. And this is Mr. Henderson.
Thank you again. Tonight, the board is asked to approve the amendments to the employment agreements for management employees, specifically cabinet level positions. The amendments are included in the attachments with the agenda item. The employment agreements are revised to extend the term, the end date of employment from June 30th, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, consistent with our district practice for such individual contract positions. The employment agreements are for the following management employees: Tim Zerley, Mark Herbst, Brad Goudreau, Mike Henderson, Russell Selkin, and Dr. Heather Contreras. The employment agreements do not change the existing salaries or forms of compensation. Therefore, as listed in the financial impact, there is not an additional increase to the board-approved salary schedule as a result of these amendments. It's recommended that the board approve the amendments to the existing employment agreements for the Associate Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and Chief Technology Officer contracts effective July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments from the public? Any questions or comments from our board members?
I see we lost, oh, he's coming back. I thought.
Okay, we'll wait a second for him to log back on.
I'm back.
Perfect. So hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the amendments to existing employment agreements for Associate Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and Chief Officer contracts effective July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2024?
I move approval.
Moved by trustee Marks, seconded by
I'll second.
Vice President Brown. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to our last item for tonight, which is B10. And this is a public hearing on Modesto City Schools core value for negotiations and Modesto City Schools and California School Employees Association and its chapter 007, initial proposals for CSEA MCS collective bargaining agreement for the 2022-2023 school years, and board action to close hearing and vote on to approve Modesto City Schools core values for negotiations and initial proposal to vote to receive CSEA's initial proposal. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you very much. We don't do that on purpose with that title. We have to cover all that. Thank you. As required in government code, we are requesting that the board hold a public hearing to provide opportunity for public input regarding the proposals for negotiating. Then following that hearing, take action on the initial proposals. That'll allow us to commence with negotiations between the district and California School Employees Association and its chapter 007. The process known
Mr. Henderson.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. I'm gonna go close the regular board meeting and then open up back in public hearing. Okay? So I'll close the regular board meeting and we'll now open the public hearing on the agenda item. Mr. Henderson, continue.
Yes, no problem. The process known as sunshining identifies the initial proposals that each party wants to open, and then that'll be the focus for our negotiations. So on behalf of the district, I've met with CSEA President Serpa. We've exchanged initial proposals. Those are attached to the agenda items. So they'll include the health and welfare and paying allowances. Those are the standard mutual reopeners. But CSEA is open Article 14, working conditions, Article 15, absences and leaves, and Article 25, professional growth. The district is open Article 9, layoff procedures, and Article 11, assignment, promotion, and transfer. So you've done the first part, which is open the public hearing, and following that public hearing, we recommend that the board take action to vote to approve the core values for negotiations and vote to approve the district's initial proposal and vote to receive CSEA's initial proposal.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments from our public? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to our board. Any comments or questions for Mr. Henderson? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing and reconvene the regular board meeting. And we're looking for a motion to approve.
I approve receipt
motion.
of the CSEA contract.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor to receiving, to vote to approve Modesto City Schools core values for negotiations and receive the initial proposal and to vote to receive CSEA initial proposal, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. And now that takes us to our items to be placed on future Board of Education agenda. Is there any for us this evening? No? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn our meeting for tonight? Motion by Trustee Marks, seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good night, everyone, and we'll see everyone back on June 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m.